Story 1. Cheating ex-wife destroys her life. Preface. I work nights and she works a day shift. Her job is a male-dominated field, and she seems to be with coworkers more frequently. There is female support staff like office jobs, parts room, etc. We're both in our 40s and have been together since we were 17 years old. She only started a career in the last couple of years, so a workplace relationship wouldn't have presented itself in the past. Here recently, she's been hanging out with her female coworkers after work many nights. She gets off work around 5 o'clock and isn't home until about 7 to 8 o'clock. A time or two, she didn't come home until the morning because she got drunk with them and slept it off there. I find that unusual because she's very responsible and doesn't usually get carried away in social situations. At that point, I'm not highly concerned. Last night, I wasn't scheduled to work, so I was in bed at a normal hour. I was awakened by her cell phone screen in bed at 3 a.m. I couldn't see if she was texting or browsing the net, and she wasn't being secretive with her screen, like angling it away, etc. So that's probably innocuous. Then she got up and started getting ready for work. Now, her shift starts at 8 o'clock, and she wouldn't need to leave earlier than 7 o'clock if she wanted to grab a bike before going in. I asked her, "I thought your shift doesn't start until 8 o'clock?" She acknowledged that but said she was going for a walk with her coworkers before work. She's a diesel mechanic and they have uniforms at work, and she seemed more cleaned up than expected for a walk or work. Not decked up, but yeah, she was out of the house by about 4 a.m. and would likely be to her friends by 4:30. It's still very dark, and it was rainy, a light drizzle, and about 45 degrees out. Nobody owns a raincoat in Oz, so what would be poor conditions for a walk? Well, she drives a truck and I drive a car, so I texted her around 5 o'clock to ask if I could get the truck so I could take some things to the dump. She didn't answer. 15 minutes later, I called to ask. She said they were still out on their walk but to just come to her work when she gets there and get it. Then, if not for the rain, I would have thought it a good opportunity to see if her hair is damp from a second shower. My brain works a bit differently than most, and I'm poor on social cues, etc. Am I overthinking this? Update 1. I confronted her by asking to see her phone. She tried to flip the script and demand my phone, so I gave it to her along with the password. I had nothing to hide. Hell, I don't even have time for meeting others anyways. I looked through her messages, and the one conversation I wanted to go through was conveniently missing. So I typed in the phone number, and her boyfriend's or whoever's name popped up. I handed her the phone and said, "I want to see the text with him." She acted incredulous, and I told her some of what I knew. That she texted him before leaving the home today and when she got back, and that I knew she was with him when she was supposedly in Vegas. She tried to act like she did not know why our phone carrier would have several pages of texting records between her and him, since she didn't want to do anything other than storm off upstairs and retreat to the bed. I went up and told her I was packing a bag and leaving. I packed up and left. Update 2. What a police investigator taught me about doing the confrontation. The first thing he told me was, on small crimes less than homicide, the guilty rarely confess, and even if they do, they withhold a lot of information. So even if your partner admits to a one-night moment of weakness, they won't tell you about the 6 months of regular cheating. So forget about getting a confession. By the time you're at this point, you're ready to press charges, so to speak, and you're just trying to get additional information to be used against them later. He also told me to start the confrontation with, "I know more than you think I know, so start talking. The truth is the only thing that's going to help you here. Don't let on how much you know. This is high-stakes poker, so don't show your cards." He also said that even though you're going to search her phone, expect to find nothing. It's either extremely well hidden or already deleted, unless they're just stupid. The guilty will hide their evidence in anticipation of the day the confrontation comes. What you need is to prove that the texts and call logs are missing. You see, you should be downloading the text records and calls from your service provider and familiar with the dates and times. Gaps where they didn't text the person is likely because they were with them at the time. This probably matches an absence. Remember, you want them to believe you know, but without playing out how limited your information is. Rarely will you have proof of them in the act. The confrontation. Ask them for their phone. They will protest this and demand to see your phone, making similar accusations. Do be prepared for scrutiny yourself. As expected, my wife did this, saying, "I don't even know your password. You won't tell me." Keep in mind the guilty fear discovery. They'll be more concerned about what you're doing with their phone than going through your phone. So observe their level of interest in finding damning info on you. My wife barely scrolled the text list and didn't even go into the pictures, which many guys keep. She was looking at the phone in my hand as I was scrolling through innocuous texts. "See, I don't know what you think I'm doing." Then I went to the phone icon, typed in his number, and pressed the text icon. No messages, big surprise, right? I went back to his contact and showed it to her and said, "Where's his text at?" She was like, "We don't ever talk." I called BS and told her that just last month alone she had over 900 texts with him. "Where are they?" She acted incredulous, but she knew that number was probably pretty accurate. She admitted to deleting them, partial truth, right? Because they were talking about how she wanted a divorce, but she wasn't ready to tell me yet. Don't give too many details like how far back you suspect it. You can give a little to add credibility that you already know everything. Knowing how many texts helped me because it was a hard fact and irrefutable and sent the message I wasn't lying when I said I knew things. What I said above is how the guilty act. See, the guilty fear discovery. They will dodge, deflect, etc. Even expect them to tell you where they went, but remember how much they tell you. If the details are vague and reaching, keep pressing for more information. Many lies are only minimally planned. They might be able to tell you about going to the bar with friends, but they won't have much detail like how someone almost got punched or who wanted darts, etc. Spouses will tell you about their fun night with friends voluntarily, but the guilty spouse will want to know why you keep asking. As I said, they already know the confrontation is coming, so they're already planning their response. They're thinking to themselves, how would an innocent person handle this? This even goes for calling light attention to themselves. My adult daughter called my wife and accused her first. Wife then told me about the confrontation. 2 reasons. She had to talk to me first to steer the conversation in case daughter called me, but also because the guilty think if they stand in the light a little that the attention goes away. I was stupid and should have asked why her daughter thought that, like what specifically she said, etc. I should have even called my daughter. How would your innocent spouse respond if talking to you about someone else's accusations against them? They would likely welcome an opportunity to give unsolicited explanations in detail because they have a clean conscience. Now think about how an innocent person handles the confrontation. They would likely be annoyed that you want to see their phone because there still is some expectation of a minor level of personal privacy. They would still surrender the phone without much fight. They would be confused more than anything, really. The innocent don't try to deceive and don't certainly rehearse it. Also remember this. The best lies have some truth mixed in them. My wife claimed she was alone at the tattoo shop getting sketches done. But she didn't come home with any sketches. She didn't take pictures of them and had very little detail. She showed me online pics of what she wanted. Her appointment was at 1 o'clock, but she left the house at 11:30 and would have only needed 45 minutes to drive there. She came home about 6 o'clock. Now I believe she went to the tattoo parlor that day, but I believe she went to his house first. They went together, got an appointment card for another appointment, future alibi maybe, had a nice lunch together, and then went back to his place for a romp and then came home. It was that evening I confronted her. So don't expect just because they can prove their whereabouts doesn't mean they can account for all the time easily. She said traffic was really bad, but no details about the crash, like a blue Honda flipped over, etc. She also said she went to Home Depot looking for some rings for a lifting strap but couldn't find them. Empty-handed errands. There's more things he taught me, but I can't recall all of them. We'll update if I remember. Update 3. She's still with him. Doubt it's gonna work out for us. I've acknowledged I have anger issues, and that's what ultimately drove her away. I've actually been making pretty good progress. She hasn't ever admitted to the affair, but I can forgive because of my role in the whole thing. She's told me that there's no hope of us reconciling, and she suggested we cohabitate for the kids. Well, I was optimistic that maybe we may one day reconcile. I am concerned that the cohabitation was a compromise she was offering because she was still afraid, so I offered her a divorce if that is what she really wants. She made no mention of it since. I took that to mean maybe she doesn't want that. Who knows? Maybe even she was softening up a little. We even took the kids to dinner last night, and she was pleasant and conversational, even looking at me while talking. I really thought maybe the ice around her heart was melting. Then, on the way home, she took a little barb at me, like to remind herself she doesn't love me. Well, this morning she was gone. I knew where she was. Unknown to her, I know where he lives. I took photos of her truck in his trailer carport before. I don't know why I even bothered, but maybe to get a gauge on her emotions. When I got there, it was just his truck in the drive. But then I saw her truck parked nearby. She didn't know I was there, but she texted me asking if we needed garbage bags, etc. I told her we were low and then asked if she was at the grocery store and if she was to get me some more creamer, as if I believe her. I wasn't getting a response, but soon I saw him pull his truck out of the drive. Her truck backed in, and his truck leave. I couldn't get too good a view, but I'm sure they left together. So I went to the door to ring the bell. No answer. I texted her to ask if she got the email mentioned earlier. She said she didn't see it, etc. So I told her what it was, and she said we'd talk when she got back. She texted she was at Costco. I said, no, you're not, about 45 minutes later. She texted a picture of the Costco building. So yeah, she just got there and is laying down a cover story. I told her to text a picture of the truck if she wanted me to believe her. She said she honestly doesn't care. I texted back, you're a good person, and I know you're trying to spare me from hurting even more, or maybe you're afraid of me, and I'm sorry for that. The lies hurt more than the truth at this point. She sent me a selfie of her in Costco. I haven't responded. I'm really conflicted because I've constantly walked out on her and the kids. I don't want to do that again, but at this point I'm ready to move on. But staying means living with someone I love and her perpetuating a lie to either protect me or because she's afraid of how I'll react. None of this is healthy. Update 4. I did the lawyer consult yesterday and other updates long. My therapist convinced me not to make any sudden decisions while my emotions are running high, so I took his advice and waited. The wife and I are cohabitating for the kids. Yeah, I'm a sap who's paying for a roof over my STBXW's head while she's out screwing this guy. She has a separate group chat with the kids and tells them things like she's out with Maria getting drinks. Of course at 4 a.m., and she's got to be at work in a couple of hours and the bars aren't open. My youngest, who's high-functioning autistic, looks up things like when the bars are open or when the gym is open, so they are now catching her in lies to them. She can lie her ass off to me all she wants, but she's screwing it up with the kids now. Well, after a couple of good nights of sleep, I'm not losing sleep over her anymore. I did the lawyer consult. Well, the lawyer says with equal time, child support would only be $42 a month. My wife doesn't want to sell the family home, and she wouldn't be able to buy me out, and she couldn't afford it by herself. Lawyer says if I want to sell the house will be sold. So I'm on a bit of a power play here. I've got way more saved up than her, so that's at risk of equal division. However, some of those things like 401k and company stock have invested yet, and so the lawyer says that's a valid point for not being able to claim them because there's still an uncertainty. She said I could protect all of that by using the house as leverage. Basically, if I opt to continue paying half the house until the kids are grown in 5 years, I could negotiate for half the future equity, and using that as a concession I could protect my savings. It would essentially be a real estate transaction at that point. As far as my personal life, I did crack under pressure from a lot of sleep and wanting to end the grieving and tried to reconcile with the wife. Basically doing the pick-me dance. I think that was about 2 weeks ago. I came home from work because I couldn't function. I prayed, never do that, her truck would still be there, and I prayed that God would put a little love in her heart for me. I tried to talk to her, but that didn't work. I was pretty pathetic. Felt like God didn't answer. Fast forward to last Sunday. I didn't have anywhere to go, but I told her that I would be out of the house until work. I do. She can see the kids without me around. She bought them pizza before dipping out again soon after. Well, I sat in my car reading this forum and that forum and other things. I don't know why, but I downloaded Tinder and set up a profile. I wasn't looking for a hookup and just casually scrolled profiles, swiping left on everything. Talked to a girl but felt nothing. After work the next morning, I see a profile and swiped right again, not sure why, instant match. She messaged me with, Hello, handsome. I'll tell you, it couldn't have come at a much better time to hear someone share kindness towards me. So we talked and it went well. We had I guess it's a date on Tuesday night. Couple of drinks. I was honest with her about my situation because, on the off chance this goes anywhere, I'm not going to start on a lie. She had been cheated on as well and was divorced a while but wanting to date again. I walked her to her car and we kissed. Mind you, my wife ended the marriage, so all we have at this point is a piece of paper. I'm not going to lie. Thinking about this woman and having hope again is what calms my mind and lets me sleep again. Maybe it's God's mercy that he ignored my request and sent someone instead to show me I can be valued by someone because I do have hope for my future again. It would be nice if it went somewhere, but if it is just a passing moment, I'm still thankful. I know this is all fast, but my marriage was in trouble for years. I had contemplated divorce for a long time but didn't act on it. Nor did I act to save the marriage either. Her affair was the final catalyst for ending it, and maybe it needed to happen because neither of us were happy, and neither of us were going to end it at this point. If I was the one being tested, I wonder if I would have failed. I have worried that I'm a risk as far as that goes, so I've always kept my distance around other women anyways. The happy memories of my wife are all too distant. This all feels like when someone who has been terminally ill dies. You grieve the loss as soon as it happens, but I think acceptance comes much faster because you've been aware of the inevitability of it. Update 5. I paid the container today. Yep, I got the ball rolling on the divorce. Now cohabitation is looking to come to an end soon. My oldest son, 23M, and I are going to roommate a place. He's not on speaking terms with his mom right now because of her cheating on me. I'm seeking to sell the house and get my equity. She doesn't want to sell. Problem for her is she can't afford the payment and won't get enough from the divorce to buy me out. It cost me $2,500, ouch, but worth it. Day trading is my hobby, and I'm really good at it. I'll have more money to execute bigger trades. Also, I've always wanted a 1979 Fiat Spider convertible and never could justify it as a responsible married man. Now I don't have two, so when this is all said and done, I'm going to be driving around in a car I've wanted for a real long time. I hope the vanity plate STRIN is available when I get the car. When I walked out of the lawyer's office today, I was hearing, "Damn, it feels good to be a gangster," in my head. I'm wondering if she's going to go full volcano when she gets served and sees I'm pushing the sale of the house. Dumb thing is we would both walk away with enough cash to get our own homes, and she can move him in with her and I can do my own thing as well. Update 6. WW is surrendering her truck back to the bank. She's been trying to text me casually, but I've been pretty good about gray rocking her, often just outright ignoring her texts. She texted me to say Home Depot had evaporative coolers in stock. We tried to get one during winter when on sale. Asked when I was coming home, cohabitating separate rooms, and even saying to have fun at the water park tomorrow. I was taking the kids. Oh, by the way, Dad's water parks are mom central, so plenty of divorced single moms there. Well, today she texted me to say that she is going to turn in her truck, 2019 Ram with a $730 payment. So our oldest will have to stop using the old paid-off car with 220K miles. I got to admit it feels good to see her having to make sacrifices for her actions. Also had a long talk with my sister. According to her, the guy my wife is with has had 4 failed marriages. She seems to think he gloms on to women, uses up their money, etc., and moves on. Seems unlikely, anyways. I told my sister that, in that case, I hope you prods are to settle up on the divorce quickly. I also said, I hope they don't break up until I have that paper and have moved on. Edit. Just had to talk about this. She's planning to return the truck because she plans to refinance the house and can't afford a cash out to pay off the truck and still be able to make the new loan amount. This fits with my plan, which was to get myself off the home. She knew I was looking for another place and didn't intend to stay and pay half the bills while she's out screwing around. I told her that my plan was for her to get the house, but that I needed to get bought out. I have a lot of other liquid assets that she would have to surrender a claim to in order to buy me out. She still comes up short, but the amount, while big, is still trivial to me as I see it as a potential cost of a quick exit. I want to get this hammered out while she's still agreeable. Time and distance has a way of getting people to not value equitable splits. She wasn't very happy about not getting any part of the liquid assets, but I told her she would have 100% of the home and could do as she pleases with it, including keeping it until the kids are all grown or even moving her boyfriend in. I still have my guard up. Update 7. Tomorrow I get my new house and sign affidavits with my lawyer. So if you followed my story, you know my STBXW of 19 years decided to have an exit affair that I discovered in March. I did the pick-me thing, but after counseling, realized my life will be better without her. I found a rental house within walking distance of our house so that the children, 13M, 14M, can come and go as they please. I changed shifts at work so I can get them from school more easily. I get the keys and move in tomorrow. I already have the utilities turned on. I can afford to start over because I've been the financially stable one. I also have to meet with my lawyer to sign the affidavits for the divorce paperwork. The STBXW and I have an email agreement, and the lawyer will model the paperwork accordingly. So hopefully we'll have signed on everything and just have to wait out the waiting period. I may well have the decree by late June/early July. I'm getting a little less than half, but if my sanity comes at a higher price, then so be it. I have some future unrealized restricted stock units for my work that have yet to vest, and the agreement includes her forfeiting any future claim to them. So if I continue to stay at my job, those shares will be worth a lot. I see no reason to leave the company on it because they have been totally supportive with a 30-day leave of absence, including short-term disability. This whole experience has made me more loyal to my employer. Since she has a good job that pays well above the poverty line, I won't have to pay spousal maintenance. Also, with equal time and being the one who pays for the health, dental, vision insurance for the kids, I only have to pay $42 a month total for child support for less than 60 months, and we're negotiating that away as well. I think in 5 years, when the children are fully grown, I'll have enough money to possibly retire abroad at 47 instead of working here in the US until I'm 70. As a married man, I knew I was financially trapped forever, wasting money on giant houses and other material excesses that I didn't want. I guess you could say that living on the other side of the planet from her would be a fringe benefit in itself. As far as relationships go, she broke my heart, but she isn't taking that heart from me. There is a girl out there somewhere that I will entrust it to, even if it means being vulnerable again. Love and hope are the greatest things, and you should not ever let a cheating spouse take those things from you. Around here, however, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Walt Disney. Update 8. Moving on. Crossing things off my bucket list and traveling abroad in a few hours. So I've taken the month of July off from work, and I'm going to Thailand. I think the key to being single again is that you have to rediscover the you that you have neglected. Right now, I'm adding to my list of experiences. When the STBXW texts me, I respond when I feel like it, sometimes not for days. The divorce is still being worked out. The financials and assets are all sorted out. Just have to sort out the custody and child support. My lawyer said her proposal was ridiculous and no judge would entertain it, so instead of amending it, we're just going to start with our own. My proposal starts with, the kids are old enough to decide for themselves, and I've got a house within walking distance of hers. She moved him in right after I moved out. It doesn't faze me. In fact, it's almost comical how cliché it is. As far as the trip goes, yes, there is a girl involved. She knows my circumstances. I talk to her all the time online. When I lose sleep at night, it's not because of a cheater that did me wrong. It's because there is a 14-hour time difference between myself and this Thai girl. My advice to the others here still struggling. Just keep moving forward. Update 9. I got a divorce and I'm moving on. Well, my divorce is final. Long story short, I left her after she basically had an exit affair. The custody and support didn't go as well as I had hoped, but I figured a best-case scenario was just that, a best case. I did get her to agree to letting half the child support go into 529 college savings plans for the boys. They're teens, and so when she pushed for alternate weekends only, I figure they're mostly grown now anyways, with few milestones left. This schedule means she has to deal with transportation to and from school. Also, it allowed me to take on a travel position at work that allows me to get about 15 hours of overtime each week with meals paid, and overtime doesn't figure into child support here. I updated my insurance at work and removed her from the policy, saving me some money. Her policy at work may well be more than she will get in child support. To top it off, I found out she has breast lumps. It's like karma for letting another man fondle them. I also updated my life insurance plans so she doesn't benefit. I saw her in person the other day when I gave her some money for a medical need for one of the boys. I wasn't fazed. I didn't feel much of anything. I'm out here living my best life now and don't need any dark clouds messing that up. For those of you just beginning this journey through hell, keep on moving. You don't want to let the devil catch you resting. I had sleepless days. I gave up my dignity begging for her back early on. Had to take leave from work, etc. All I got to say is, you will survive. Keep on keeping on. Update 10. Karma starting to roll the dice. I tend to believe that justice is eventually achieved and that people generally get the outcome they deserve. I found out she recently got fired from her job. It's pretty fitting considering that's where she met her affair partner. Supposedly, she was being harassed by a coworker, and she reported it and was fired. They probably figured she was the one doing the harassing since she already ruined 2 marriages. AP was married also, to sleep with a coworker in the past. I imagine that history might not help her any if this becomes a lawsuit. Broken, jobless, and under heavy vehicle debt, she has to sell the house she intended on keeping. She can't afford movers, her back is bad, and her boyfriend is old and will probably get stuck with the task. Crazy thing is I know of a good job that would be better pay and benefits than her old job. Part of me wants to pass on the info, and part of me just wants to pop some popcorn. Well, my therapist told me a long time ago that it's not my job to rescue her and not to carry the burden of doing so. So extra butter it is, then. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Am I the a-hole for refusing to get rid of my baby after my husband accused me of cheating while being manipulated by his ex-girlfriend? IF32. Never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am. My world was turned upside down last week, and I'm still trying to process everything that happened. I guess I should start from the beginning. My husband, let's call him Mark, I'm 34, and I have been married for 5 years. We both have good jobs. I work in marketing and he's in finance. We always talked about having kids someday, but we were in no rush. We enjoyed our life together, traveling and focusing on our careers. About 3 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but we were both excited. Mark was over the moon, already talking about nursery colors and baby names. Everything seemed perfect. At work, I'm part of a team of 6 people. One of my coworkers, let's call him Jake, I'm 30, joined our team about a year ago. Jake and I got along well from the start. We have similar senses of humor and often work on projects together. I never thought anything of it. He's just a good colleague and friend. Last week, Mark came home from work later than usual. I was in the kitchen heating up some leftovers for dinner. As soon as he walked in, I could tell something was off. His face was tight, and he barely looked at me as he sat down with his briefcase. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just mumbled something about a long day. We sat down to eat in silence. I tried to make conversation, talking about my day and some funny thing that happened at work, but Mark was barely responding. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of awkward silence, Mark put down his fork and looked at me. His eyes were cold in a way I'd never seen before. He asked, "Is the baby mine?" I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Of course, the baby was his. How could he even think otherwise? I told him exactly that, but he didn't seem convinced. Mark then started asking a series of questions. How often did I work late? How many times had I gone out for drinks with coworkers? Did I ever work on weekends? Each question felt like an accusation. I answered honestly, trying to stay calm, even though my heart was racing. Yes, sometimes I worked late, but never excessively. Yes, I occasionally had drinks with coworkers, but always in a group setting. And yes, I sometimes worked on weekends, but usually from home. Then Mark dropped the bombshell. He asked about Jake. How often did we work together? Did we ever meet outside of work? Had I ever been alone with him? I was stunned. Where was all this coming from? I told Mark that Jake was just a coworker and friend. We worked on projects together often, but we'd never met outside of work events. I couldn't understand why Mark was so fixated on Jake. Mark's face hardened as I spoke. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and said, "I don't believe you. I think you've been having an affair with Jake, and I think that baby might be his." I felt like I'd been slapped. Tears started welling up in my eyes as I tried to process what Mark was saying. How could he think this? I've never been anything but faithful to him. I love him more than anything in the world. I tried to reason with Mark. I told him again and again that I'd never cheated on him, that Jake was just a friend, that the baby was absolutely his. But Mark wouldn't listen. He kept bringing up little things. How I'd mentioned Jake's name a few times when talking about work. How I'd been more tired lately, which was because of the pregnancy. How I'd been distant, again pregnancy hormones. As Mark listed his evidence, I felt myself getting angry. How dare he accuse me of this after 5 years of marriage? How could he not trust me? I told him he was being ridiculous and that he needed to stop this nonsense right now. That's when Mark dropped the ultimatum. If you want to stay married to me, you need to get an abortion. I'm not raising another man's child. I was speechless. Abort our baby? The child we'd been so excited about just a few days ago? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told Mark absolutely not. I would never abort our child, especially not over his unfounded suspicions. Mark's face turned cold. He said, "Fine, then. I want a divorce and I'll be asking for a paternity test." I broke down crying. How had this happened? How had we gone from being excited, expectant parents to this in just a matter of days? I begged Mark to reconsider, to trust me, to remember our love and our life together. But he wouldn't budge. The next few days were a blur. Mark moved into the spare bedroom and barely spoke to me. I tried to talk to him several times, but he just shut me out. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I was worried about the stress affecting the baby. I called my sister and told her everything. She was furious with Mark and offered to let me stay with her for a while. I was tempted, but I didn't want to leave my home. I still hoped that Mark would come to his senses. A week has passed now, and nothing has changed. Mark is still insisting on either an abortion or a divorce. I've told him repeatedly that I won't abort our child, but he won't listen. He's already talked to a lawyer about divorce proceedings. I'm at a loss. I love Mark, and I want our marriage to work, but I also love this baby, and I can't bring myself to terminate the pregnancy. I don't understand how Mark can throw away our marriage over these baseless suspicions. I've suggested couples counseling, but Mark refuses. He says there's nothing to discuss unless I admit the truth, but there's no truth to admit. I've never cheated on him, and this baby is his. I thought about reaching out to Jake to ask him to talk to Mark, but I'm worried that might make things worse. Mark might see it as proof of our supposed affair. My friends are split. Some think I should just take the paternity test to prove Mark wrong. Others say I shouldn't have to prove anything and that Mark's behavior is unforgivable. My family is firmly on my side, but they live in another state and can't offer much practical support. I'm trying to stay strong for the baby, but this stress is taking its toll. I'm not sleeping well. I'm constantly on edge, and I'm worried about the effect all this might have on my pregnancy. Part of me wonders if I should just agree to the divorce. Maybe it would be better for the baby to grow up with a single mother than in a home with a father who resents them. But another part of me still loves Mark and wants to fight for our marriage. I never thought I'd be in this position. I always believed that Mark and I had a strong, trusting relationship. I don't understand how he can throw it all away like this. I feel betrayed, hurt, and angry at the same time. I'm worried about Mark. This behavior is so out of character for him. I wonder if something else is going on that I don't know about. Has he been having problems at work? Is he dealing with some kind of mental health issue? But whenever I try to ask him about these things, he shuts down. I've thought about reaching out to his family or friends, but I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do. I don't want to air our dirty laundry, but I'm running out of options. The pregnancy is progressing, and I have my first ultrasound scheduled for next week. I always imagined Mark would be there with me, holding my hand and getting excited about seeing our baby for the first time. Now I don't know if he'll even acknowledge the appointment. I'm torn between anger at Mark for putting me in this position and worry for him. I still love him despite everything. I want to understand why he's doing this, why he suddenly doesn't trust me, but every time I try to talk to him, it just turns into an argument. I've started looking into my options if Mark does go through with the divorce. I've spoken to a lawyer in secret. I don't want to escalate things, and I'm trying to understand what my rights are. The thought of going through a divorce while pregnant is terrifying, but I need to be prepared. My job has been understanding so far. I've had to take a few personal days to deal with all this, and my boss has been supportive, but I'm worried about the long-term impact. If Mark and I do divorce, will I be able to keep my job and take care of a baby on my own? I've also been researching pregnancy and stress. Everything I read says that high levels of stress can be harmful to the baby. I'm doing my best to stay calm, but it's hard when my whole world feels like it's falling apart. I've started keeping a journal, writing down everything that's happening. Part of me hopes that someday, when all this is over, Mark will read it and understand what he put me through. Another part of me thinks I'm just trying to make sense of a senseless situation. Yesterday, I ran into Jake at work. He could tell something was wrong and asked if I was okay. I nearly broke down right there in the office. I managed to hold it together, but I wonder what Jake would say if he knew he was at the center of all this drama. I've thought about telling Jake what's going on, but I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do. On one hand, he's inadvertently involved in this situation. On the other hand, bringing him into it might just make things worse with Mark. Every night I go to bed hoping that I'll wake up and this will all have been a bad dream. Every morning I wake up and remember that this is my reality now. I'm trying to stay positive for the baby's sake. I talk to my belly, telling the baby how much I love them, how excited I am to meet them. But sometimes, in my darkest moments, I wonder if Mark is right. What if there is something wrong with me? What if I did something to destroy our marriage without even realizing it? I know logically that these thoughts aren't true. I know I've been faithful to Mark. I know this baby is his. But after days and days of accusations, it's hard not to let the doubt creep in. I've started seeing a therapist on my own. I need someone to talk to, someone who can help me navigate this impossible situation. It helps, but it's not a solution. The therapist suggested that Mark might be projecting, that maybe he's the one who's been unfaithful, but I can't let myself believe that. It would hurt too much. So here I am, pregnant, alone, and facing the possibility of divorce. I never imagined this is where I'd be at this point in my life. I always thought Mark and I would be picking out baby clothes together, not fighting over paternity tests and divorce lawyers. I don't know what to do. I won't abort this baby. I already love them too much, but I also don't want to lose my marriage. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my child and my husband, and it's tearing me apart. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to abort my baby? Should I just take the paternity test to prove Mark wrong? Or should I stand my ground and let him file for divorce if that's what he wants to do? I'm lost, hurt, and scared. Any advice would be appreciated. TLDR. My husband accuses me of cheating and says the baby isn't his. He wants me to either get an abortion or he'll file for divorce. I refuse to abort, but I don't want a divorce either. Update. Hello everyone. I never expected to be back here with an update, but a lot has happened since my last post. I want to thank everyone who offered advice and support. Your kind words meant more to me than I can express during that difficult time. So here's what happened. A few days after my original post, I got a call from my sister. She sounded upset and told me she had some information about my situation with Mark. I was confused at first, but what she told me next left me speechless. Apparently, Mark's ex-girlfriend from college, let's call her Sarah, had recently moved back to our city. My sister's friend works at the same company as Sarah and overheard her bragging about how she was going to get Mark back. According to what my sister heard, Sarah had been in contact with Mark for weeks. She'd been feeding him lies about seeing me with Jake, making up stories about us having secret meetings and acting inappropriately at work. She even went as far as to tell Mark she'd seen us kissing in a car outside a restaurant. I was furious. How could Mark believe these lies? How could he trust his ex-girlfriend over his wife of 5 years? I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and oddly, relief. At least now I knew where all this was coming from. I confronted Mark that evening. I told him everything my sister had told me and demanded an explanation. At first, he tried to deny it, but when I pressed, he finally admitted the truth. Sarah had reached out to him on social media a few months ago. They started talking, catching up on old times. Then, when she moved back to the city, they met for coffee. That's when she started telling him about my supposed affair with Jake. Mark claimed he didn't want to believe it at first, but Sarah kept providing more and more evidence. She'd sent him pictures of me and Jake at work events, which she'd gotten from the company's social media pages, twisting innocent interactions into something sinister. I asked Mark why he didn't just talk to me about it. Why did he trust Sarah over me? He said he was afraid of being made a fool of, that Sarah had convinced him I would just lie if confronted. As he talked, I felt my anger growing. This man who I'd loved and trusted for years had allowed his ex-girlfriend to manipulate him so easily. He'd been willing to throw away our marriage, to demand I abort our child, all because of lies told by someone who clearly had her own agenda. I asked Mark if he'd ever cheated on me with Sarah. He swore he hadn't, that they'd only met that one time for coffee. But at this point, I didn't know if I could believe anything he said. We talked and argued for hours. Mark apologized over and over, begging me to forgive him. He said he'd been stupid and weak, that he'd let his insecurities get the best of him. He promised to cut all contact with Sarah and said he wanted to work on our marriage. But as I sat there listening to his apologies and promises, I realized something. The trust between us was broken. Even if Sarah's lies were the catalyst, Mark was the one who chose to believe them. He was the one who threatened our marriage and our unborn child. He was the one who put me through weeks of hell instead of having an honest conversation with me. In that moment, I made a decision. I told Mark I wanted a divorce. He was shocked. He begged me to reconsider, to give him another chance. But my mind was made up. I couldn't stay with someone who trusted an ex-girlfriend over his wife. I couldn't raise a child with someone who had been so quick to accuse me of infidelity and demand an abortion. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I moved out and stayed with my sister. I filed for divorce. Mark tried several times to change my mind, but I stood firm. It hasn't been easy. There are days when I miss the life we had, when I wonder if I made the right choice. But then I remember the pain and betrayal I felt, and I know I'm doing what's best for me and my baby. I'm now 5 months pregnant. The baby is healthy, and it's a girl. I'm scared about being a single mom, but I'm also excited to meet my daughter and start this new chapter of my life. As for Mark, last I heard, he tried to rekindle things with Sarah but quickly realized what kind of person she really was. He's reached out a few times asking to be part of the baby's life. I'm still deciding how to handle that. Jake, my coworker, was horrified when he found out he'd been unwittingly involved in all this drama. He's been supportive and understanding, but I've made it clear that I'm not interested in anything beyond friendship right now. My focus is on my baby and healing from this whole ordeal. So that's where things stand now. It's not the happily ever after I once imagined, but I'm at peace with my decision. I'm looking forward to the future, whatever it may bring. Thank you again to everyone who supported me. Your kindness helped me through one of the toughest times of my life. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Family is pressuring me to reconcile with my dad, who abandoned me for his new family. But I refused to let him back into my life. When I was 13, my dad had an affair and left my mom and moved in with his affair partner, who I will call Janet. At first, me and my sister would visit every weekend, and I will admit he was a good dad. Although I never liked Janet. When Janet got pregnant and had their son, our visits became less frequent, and my dad was more concerned with his new family. He would miss some of my recitals or my sister's competitions because he was busy with his son. When I was 16, Janet decided she wanted to move for a new job opportunity. Me and my sister begged him not to leave us, but he just said, "I need to prioritize my family." He moved 10 hours away. That pretty much ended our relationship, and I decided to go no contact, as it was clear he did not consider me family. My younger sister stayed in contact with him. He would try and call me and offer for me to come and visit with my sister, but I refused. When he came back to see my sister, I would refuse to speak to him. When he turned up at the house, I didn't invite him to my high school or college graduation. I'm now 33 and have remained no contact with him. He has, over the years, repeatedly tried contacting me and getting his family to contact me on his behalf to reconcile. I have avoided family events in case he attended, including my sister's wedding and baby showers. My dad and his family moved back to our hometown 3 months ago, and he has been relentless trying to reconcile. I have received messages from my half-brother and sister wanting a relationship, saying he's a great dad. My dad found out I'm getting married and keeps trying to contact me and has even tried to speak to my fiancé. Janet messaged me saying, "I broke my dad's heart repeatedly, and you're pathetic and should get therapy." I replied back that she was nothing but a home-wrecking and then blocked her. Everyone seems to be wanting me to let him back into my life. I'm sick of all the harassment and accidentally bumping into my dad and his family in town. Whenever I see him, I just walk away and refuse to speak to them. Everyone is saying he's a good dad and tried his best to remain in contact, but I pushed him away. Everyone is pressuring me. My mom, sister, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, even some of my friends. My fiancé has even started saying I'm the one in the wrong for shutting him out. Update 1. I have just spoken to my fiancé, and unfortunately, it has not gone well. But at this point in time, I've had enough and want to run away and never come back. My fiancé knows my history with my dad and Janet. I explained to him that him siding with my father and pressuring me was hurting me, and as my fiancé, he should be supporting me. My fiancé, who I'll call Larry, told me he can't support me in doing something that he knows is wrong. Larry told me that he had spoken to my father and had an understanding of both sides of the story and believes that if we both sit down and talk, we can sort this out and reconcile. I told Larry I don't want this and want no contact and asked why he is even speaking to my father. Larry admitted his father, who is friends with my dad, encouraged Larry to speak to him and hear him out. Larry told me my dad loved me very much and always wanted to be in my life, and his pictures of me. I'm guessing he got these from my family as my social media is set to private. Larry said my dad is heartbroken at the state of our relationship because I was being unreasonable about him moving away when I was young. Larry stated I got off on the wrong foot with Janet and that I was not innocent in the breakdown of the relationship. He told me that everyone can see the truth but me and to look in the mirror because I'm the problem. Needless to say, I broke down crying and asked him why he was doing this to me and not supporting me. Larry claims to love me but won't stand by and watch me be a heartless bee. After he said this, I stood up, told him that he shouldn't marry a heartless bee and walked out. I'm currently sat in my car. My phone is blowing up with Larry trying to contact me, but I don't want to speak to him. I feel like I'm losing everything and everyone. I don't understand what is happening. Update 2. I know a lot of you are telling me to cut all contact with my family and leave town. That is not an option for me financially. I would not be able to set up business elsewhere. All my money is invested in it, and I have only managed to get established recently with steady income. Relocating is not an option for me. I love my friends and family and don't want to alienate everyone. I love my hometown. I grew up here. This is my life, and I'm not willing to walk away from it. I didn't expect to write another update this fast, but a lot has happened today. So firstly, I agreed to meet my dad to talk and try and get him to back off and leave me alone. I asked my mom to arrange it. Just him, no one else. I wasn't sure if he would agree to that, but within 15 minutes of her calling, he was at the door. I asked my mom to stay. To summarize the conversation, him, he wants. My dad is in therapy and wants me to join him for family sessions. He wants me to spend time with him one-to-one, to stop being rude and mean to his children and spend time with them, stop trash-talking Janet to everyone and actually give her a chance, invite him and my family to my wedding, and to walk me down the aisle. I want him to stop talking to my friends and getting others to try and talk to me on his behalf. Keep Janet away from me completely, to be civil at events or in town, providing he does not try and hug me or talk to me. My mom told him he was being unrealistic with some of the things he wants, especially regarding Janet and his other children. So we have agreed, for now, I will attend 3 therapy sessions with him when he arranges it. My mom thinks I need individual therapy as well. He will stop trying to interfere in my life and relationships. He will keep Janet away from me and talk to his kids to give me space. I will be civil to him in public as long as he respects my personal space and does not approach or pressure me. As for my fiancé, I still haven't spoken to him. He turned up at my mom's, but she refused to let him in. He keeps blowing up my phone, and so does his family and friends, telling me to hear him out. During my conversation with my dad, I found out my dad has paid for most of the vendors and services for my upcoming wedding, and they have been on speaking terms for quite some time, longer than I thought. Larry told me his family had paid for these, and I believed him. I feel betrayed by him and that I can't trust him. I'm going to have to speak to him eventually, but I don't feel ready. I feel betrayed by him and that I can't trust him. Update 3. Firstly, the deal with my dad is off the table. He couldn't even manage a week without overstepping my boundaries, so there will be no therapy sessions with him, and I will remain no contact. As you are all aware, after speaking to my dad and agreeing a way forward in my conditions, keep Janet away from me, tell his kids to back off, don't pressure me or invade my space. It lasted all of 3 days. Everyone seemed happy. I'd forgiven my dad and told me so. My sister was excited I was willing to give him a chance. And with some pressure, I agreed to have dinner with just her and my dad. When my sister and I arrived at the restaurant to meet our dad, he was not alone. He had invited Janet, my grandparents, his son, and daughter. He got up and tried to hug me. I immediately became upset, asking why they were there. My dad told me that if we have any hope of repairing our relationship, I had to accept Janet and my younger siblings. I told him he just broke our deal and to never contact me again and tried to leave. He refused to let me leave. He grabbed hold of me. When I say all hell broke loose, I mean it. I started shouting at them. My dad, Janet, and grandparents tried to gaslight me and convince me to sit down. When it didn't work, things got very heated and a shouting match started, and a lot of unforgivable things were said by my dad and Janet, including remarks about my appearance and calling me a psychopath. My half-brother walked out of the restaurant, and my half-sister started to cry. My sister actually surprised me and defended me, shouting at my dad for ruining things after all this time when I had finally given him a chance. She even slapped Janet. She got me out of there and apologized to me. I think this was the first time she had really seen how Janet was with me and how she treated me. She kept saying she couldn't understand how Dad had spent years saying he would do anything to have me back and then would do this when he finally got his chance to rebuild the relationship. My dad has been trying to contact me, but I have blocked him and refused to talk to him. I also refused to speak to my grandparents. My dad has tried to convince my mom and sister to speak to me, but I think he's burned his bridges with them. The incident from the restaurant has spread, and some people seem to be backing off. Like I said, what my dad and Janet shouted at me was unforgivable, and they were overheard, and this is a small town. Hopefully, people will back off and those who want them gone will have to cut them out. My sister is very unhappy with my dad and Janet and not speaking to them. She is blaming them for me going no contact again. My sister is not letting them see her kids. I don't know if my sister will reconcile, but right now she is furious. My mom is also furious and apparently had a few choice words with my dad and Janet and has promised she will never pressure me again to speak to him. I am going to go to individual therapy. I think I definitely need it. I do feel bad about my half-siblings as they haven't done anything wrong, and I may be open to having a distanced kind of relationship with them in the future, but I'm not ready yet, or if I'll ever be. I did send them a message on Facebook to apologize and tell them they've done nothing wrong. Lastly, to update you all in regards to my fiancé. While I spoke to him yesterday about everything, I had been radio silent since walking out on him basically. He was pressured by his father to speak to my dad and was fed a sob story of a misunderstood father desperately wanting to be in his daughter's life. Larry had become annoyed with me refusing to attend his family events and walking out of his mother's birthday party when I realized my dad and Janet were there, as he was getting pressure from his family about me ruining their events. He just wanted everyone to be happy and get along, clearly at my expense. Larry admitted my dad had paid for some of the vendors for the wedding, but he did not know this until after it was already paid. His father had told Larry that he and his mom had paid. My dad had told Larry it was a gift in his way of contributing. Larry admitted my dad had asked him to speak to me on his behalf. I told Larry he had betrayed my trust, and I couldn't see myself marrying someone who does not support me. He broke down crying and apologizing to me and promising to never do it again. Larry was heartbroken and begged for a second chance. To those of you who wanted me to break up with him, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we are going to try and work through this. Apart from this issue, he had been the best partner, and I genuinely think that he had been manipulated by his family and my dad. Larry has promised to stand up to his family and go no contact with my dad. I'm still living at my mom's as I still need some space, which I won't have if I move home. We are going to contact our wedding vendors and see what our options are next week. Larry is begging for a postponement rather than cancel it altogether. We may still break up as actions speak louder than words, and I need to see if he can rebuild what we had and show me I can trust and depend on him. My dad has been trying to contact me, but I have blocked him. Larry has promised to stand up to his family and go no contact with my dad. There's no point changing my number when I've done this before. He always manages to get it again. As for Larry, breaking up is not off the table. I'm giving him a chance to show me he means what he says. I always thought I had a decent relationship with Larry's family, but clearly not. I'm not asking him to go no contact with them. That's for him to decide. I'm certainly going to distance myself from them, and any further incidents, no contact. As for any future children, if we are still together, I won't be trusting them with my children at all. Update 4. I have canceled the wedding. I was able to get some partial refunds but have lost some money. Larry begged me not to cancel the wedding, but there was no way I could marry him after what he did. I was set on giving him a second chance, and he promised me he would go low contact and stand up to his parents. I issued an ultimatum that we would not tolerate any contact with my dad and Janet. Basically, he would tell them we would not attend any event or party if they were invited, and we would not tolerate any attempt to force contact or relationship with my dad. He met with them to explain this to them. When he came back from this meeting, he was quite irritable with me and appeared to have had a change of heart. To summarize it, he was trying to convince me his family only meant well and that he can't go low contact with his family because he loves them and he can't dictate their friendships. He then tried to convince me it won't be an issue in the future and his father would speak to my dad and tell him to be on his best behavior in my presence. As soon as I heard this, people's comments went through my head, and the main one being if we had children, he would take them to his family where my dad and Janet would be, and I would have no control over this. At that moment, I realized I couldn't trust Larry and never would be able to. I broke up with him. He is not taking it well and keeps begging me to take him back and that he would go no contact with his family. His family and friends are trying to convince me on his behalf not to end our relationship. He has made his choice and proven to me he is spineless. I don't need him in my life. In regards to my dad, I'm looking into getting a restraining order, given what happened in the restaurant. I might be able to, but I don't know yet. A friend of mine is helping me look into this. My dad has kept a low profile since last week. Apart from a couple of attempts to apologize to me, I haven't heard much from him. My sister still won't speak to him. Janet, unlike me, my sister is highly confrontational and has blasted him and Janet on social media with what happened at the restaurant and things that have happened in the past which I didn't know about. My sister and Janet had a very public screaming match when she had seen them in town due to my sister's posts and demanding to take them down. It ended up with Janet assaulting my sister. My dad apparently sided with Janet in this. My sister now hates Janet and refuses to speak to our dad, who is also trying to contact her. My dad and Janet's reputation seems to have taken a hit in between the incident in the restaurant and my sister's fight with Janet and had numerous Facebook posts about them. People are gossiping. This has worked well for me because some people have backed off, which I'm happy about. Unfortunately, there are a few people still on his side, including my ex's parents. As for my half-siblings, there's not much of an update in regards to them. I found a therapist. However, there is a bit of a waiting list before I can start my therapy. I'm still living with my mom, who is completely on my side, and I have found a kitten and will pick her up next week. Update 5. I'm still at my mom's and I got my little kitten. I've named her Sasha, and she is the sweetest thing but very energetic. For those of you asking for pictures, I'll try, but she refuses to stay still long enough to get one that's not blurred. I love her already. My mom continues to be my rock. I am still waiting for therapy, but I'm finding Reddit useful and therapeutic, and the support I've received from most of the people on here has been great and helped me see things more clearly. So a big thank you to everyone. As for my ex, now that we've broken up, I feel lighter and free, and being away from him has made me see all the red flags that I was blind to in our relationship and feel like I've dodged a bullet. Luke, using real names because my posts were discovered, is not taking the breakup well and is taking over for my father, constantly bothering me. If you read this, Luke, we are done, and I'm not changing my mind, so stop calling me, stop coming to the house, and stop sending me flowers. I'm moving on, so you should too. My sister, Emma, is still firmly on my side and has washed her hands of Janet, stepmonster, and they are not on speaking terms. After my sister told everyone about Janet's affairs, Janet is still trying to save face, saying my sister is lying and telling everyone she can that we are just the worst and that we have treated her terribly over the years and trying to ruin her marriage. I don't think anyone is buying what she is saying. She has sent abusive messages to me and my sister, and when we've bumped into her, she's been screaming at us and threatening us. My sister's car had been keyed, and my store windows were smashed. We can't prove it's her, unfortunately, but she is the most likely culprit. My half-siblings are definitely my dad's children. They tested them years ago when she was a baby, from what I've heard. They're not speaking to Janet at all. As for my dad, he seems to have grown a spine and has kicked out Janet. She is now living with her parents, from what I've heard. He's thinking about divorce. I haven't had any contact with my dad except for a text saying he was sorry for everything. As for getting a restraining order, I'm more concerned about getting one against Janet at the moment. Oops, I have cameras, but you can't see her because of the angle. I'm getting more fitted for better coverage. I know the damage is already done. He had his chance to fix things with me, and he blew it. I just want to be left alone and get on with my life. Update 6. My dad and Janet are still together. They broke up for a while, but now they are back together and showing a united front. Even though she's a cheater, apparently. They tried again for the sake of their kids. Weirdly enough, me and my dad are in a better place. We occasionally text and are cordial when we see each other. But he has stopped pushing so hard for a relationship and respecting my space. We can now be in the same place and room without a scene and have had the occasional coffee together, which, to be fair, is all I ever wanted. He even gave me my college fund with no strings attached. My step-siblings and I have started talking, and we follow each other on social media. My stepsister comes to my business sometimes and helps out. I realized they were not at fault, and I was being unfair to them. They are still upset with their mom but are stuck living with her, from what I can gather. They are giving her the silent treatment. As for Janet, I still hate her, but at least she is staying out of my business. I unfortunately could not get a restraining order against her due to lack of evidence. I avoid her and won't speak to her, and I think my dad has warned her. My sister is speaking to our dad again but despises Janet and refuses to have anything to do with her and is going out of her way to exclude her from everything she possibly can. Me and her have become so much closer. As for Larry, we are not back together and never will be. He has not fully accepted this, but things have calmed down, and I'm not being harassed as much. He still wants to get back together, but I'm not interested. Him, his friends, and family will eventually accept this. He thinks because things are better with my dad and me now, I'll soften and forgive him too, but I just can't trust him. As for me, I started therapy and I'm working through my issues. I've realized the relationship with my dad wasn't purely his fault, and I share blame in this. I've spent my life acting like he abandoned me when I pushed him away as well. My business is doing well, and I'm just focusing on myself. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Stepfather caught between wife's desire for a normal daughter and stepdaughter's alternative style choices causing tension in the family. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter. My wife is 31. In high school, my wife was a popular girl stereotype. Pink, blonde, chunky highlights in her brown hair. This was the mid-late 2000s. She was on the cheerleading team, had lots of friends and boyfriends, was well known and liked. She was basically the living embodiment of the picture-perfect girl from those cheesy 2000s high school movies. And then she got pregnant when she was 15. She had her daughter. She doesn't know who the father is, and any potential fathers for the girl up and left way back when. Her daughter is recently 16. I never wanted kids. I found them annoying, but I fell in love with my wife and got married when she was 20, and I was 23 after dating for 2 years. We hit it off, and I married her and decided to suck it up around the kid. I never planned to absolutely love being a dad to her. Specifically, kids still annoy me, but my daughter, stepdaughter technically, was different. She was quiet, nerdy, even at a young age. I married her mother when she was 5, and we clicked right away. We went on daddy-daughter dates every weekend. I played dolls with her, let her paint my nails and do makeup on me. I drove her to and from school in my cop car. We even did daddy-daughter duo costumes for Halloween. Over the past 2 years, she's developed a darker dress style. I don't know what the proper subculture of her outfits are, but according to her, she's dressing like a horror game protagonist and a Monster High character. Purple is her main color she incorporates into this specific aesthetic blend, as she calls it. I don't get it, but maybe that's because I'm a man in my 30s. I don't know. She likes ghosts, tarot cards, vampires, zombies, aliens, creepy Victorian dolls. I don't get it, but also I don't care because if it makes her happy, so what? She's also an introvert and prefers to play games on her computer or read fantasy occult novels rather than hang out with other teens her age. She has friends, so I'm not too worried about her being completely withdrawn. I'm just glad I don't have to drive her around, since she only has a learner's permit currently. My wife hates this. My wife always wanted a girly girl. Pinks and pastels and flowers and all that. She wants our daughter to get a boyfriend, be more social, be a cheerleader like she was, which in itself is valid. I get it. I'm sure most every parent has preferences for what they want their kid to turn out like, and some disappointment when they stray from that fantasy is valid. My wife will constantly take and hide my daughter's darker room decor. She constantly gets pastel dresses for our daughter, tells her to wipe off her dark eye makeup, tries to set her up on dates with jock types from my daughter's school, and convince her to sign up for both school and summer activities like cheerleading or volleyball. I could have put up with all of that. I really could have. But a few weeks ago, I woke up to my wife finally hitting her breaking point. I woke up in the middle of the night to my wife screaming and having what I can confidently describe as a borderline meltdown. She was crying and saying all she ever wanted was a normal daughter who likes pink and is a cheerleader and has a boyfriend and will give her grandkids. I had to drag her out of the hallway after 30 minutes of this. I kept thinking it would stop, but it kept going on and on. My daughter was just staring at this whole thing in the doorway of her room. What caused this meltdown for my wife? My daughter dyed purple over the blonde streak / highlights my wife had forced her to get in her hair, which wasn't even breaking a house rule, as my wife and I have both told her she can do whatever she wants with her hair as long as she doesn't stain too many towels. It's been weeks, and my daughter won't talk to her mom. My wife is still up with her antics, but now it's an overdrive. Every day she brings home some type of trendy clothing in pink or pastels and tries to give it to my daughter. My daughter is getting fed up and stays in her room all day and has confessed to me she can't wait for school to start back up in a few weeks, so she can get out of the house and be with her friends again. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to side with anyone in this situation. I understand my wife wants a daughter who she can relate to, and my daughter wants a mom who understands her. Update 1. It's been about a week since I last posted about how my wife was having a meltdown over how my daughter chose to dress. 2 nights after I posted, I sat my wife down and very bluntly asked her what exactly the problem was. She kept saying she just wanted a daughter who was similar to her, but after I kept asking, she broke down and admitted the real reason why she was having her meltdowns. My wife feels that her daughter is the only way for her to have more family in the future. She's estranged from her siblings. Her parents don't speak much to her, and all of her friends from high school stopped talking to her after her pregnancy. She wants a family back, and she's hoping that her daughter will marry a nice boy and give her grandkids so she can have a family again. She said she never brought up having more kids with me because she figured I'd be against the idea. I don't know how I feel about having more kids with my wife, but it certainly won't happen now. So my wife is in therapy to try and get her to realize that she can't just view my daughter as a way to create a family. She's doing well so far, but it's too soon to really tell. My daughter is also in therapy. She's been in therapy since she was a kid for bullying issues, but now her therapist is trying to focus on the meltdown situation with her. My daughter actually seems relatively unaffected by this whole situation, other than a little annoyed, so I don't know if that's good or not. I took my daughter to Hot Topic for some back-to-school accessories and then took her out to eat, just the two of us. She's still excited to go back to school. She misses her friends and her clubs. My wife and daughter have started talking normally again. They had a long talk, which I was present for, where my wife apologized for being so pushy and extreme with her wishes. My daughter was very receptive to this talk and seems to be back to her normal self. I am keeping an eye on both of them to be sure. My wife is doing her best to understand my daughter's interests. Last I know, the two were watching some slasher TV show on Hulu as a way to bond, and it appears to be working. There isn't any bad blood between the two. I know things are recent, and that things can change, but so far, everything appears to be smoothing over pretty well. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Toxic parents never wanted me and tried to control my life. So I moved out at 18 and started a successful crochet business. But they kept trying to sabotage me every step of the way. My parents have never liked me, you see. They were high school sweethearts and even went to the same college. They had big plans to travel the world and experience different cultures. But all of those dreams were shattered when my mother found out she was pregnant when they were still in college. They wanted to terminate the pregnancy, but their parents did not allow them to do so. Eventually, my mother had to drop out of college to stay with her parents because she could not take all the people staring and gossiping about her. This is how I was born. My mother hated me, but my grandparents absolutely adored me. For a very long while, I thought my mother was actually my sister and my grandparents were my parents. Since my mother never spent any time with me, she would ignore me or scream at me if I tried to get her attention. My dad also would never come and see me, so I had no idea that he even existed. My parents were still dating during this time. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that my parents did not want a child, but I was just a child and I did not understand their hate for me. Nevertheless, my mom's parents and dad's parents would spend time with me, babysit me, and treat me well. By the time my dad graduated college, I had started to walk and talk a bit. I guess this is when he started to feel a bit guilty for not being there for me. He started to come every weekend to visit me. I thought he was just a friend of my grandparents. My mother hated seeing my dad spending time with me and would always tell him how it was best just to ignore me, but my grandparents encouraged my dad to get to know me. This is how I found out who my real dad was. Once he got a job, he proposed to my mom, and they moved in together. My dad wanted me to move in with them so they could start taking care of me, but my mom was vehemently against this. My grandparents were getting old and wanted my parents to take responsibility for their own actions. Begrudgingly, my parents stepped up for me, and at the age of 5, I moved in with them. To say I hated living with my parents would be an understatement. It was like all the light and goodness in my life disappeared and was replaced by dark and gloomy clouds every day. My mother would remind me that I should be thankful for staying at their place, and if I did something wrong, she would kick me out. My dad was working the whole day and would come home late at night. If I wanted to spend time with him, he would tell me how he needed some time alone and would urge me to go to bed, telling me that he didn't have the bandwidth to handle me that day. I went from living with my loving grandparents to living with my parents who absolutely despised me. Now, I was too young to understand why, but I did understand how unwanted I felt at their place. My parents would buy me no toys and no ice creams like every other kid. Sometimes I would go to school without my assignment being completed, so then my teacher would call up my mom to question her about it. My mom would later scream at me that I was a lazy person and that I should take responsibility for my own studies. I was so terrified of my mom that I started to do my own homework as best as I could every day after school because I thought doing so would make her accept me eventually. But she never did. My dad didn't care a single penny about what I was doing the whole day or how well I was doing in school and continued to live his life in his own bubble. When I started growing up, I slowly started to understand how different my parents were compared to other kids' parents. I would see other parents drop off their kids, hug them, kiss them, and smile at them. I never had any of that. It was like I was living with two strangers, and this made me question if I wasn't the biological kid of my parents. Perhaps I would question my grandparents whenever I went to visit them, and they would assure me that I was very much my parents' child and would tell me that my parents just needed some time to grow up. Meanwhile, my mother would say hurtful things to me whenever she could. She would make fun of my hair, my glasses, and my weight, and would tell me things like if she was in high school with me, then she would have bullied me so much, which was just weird to hear. I remember that I have always been allergic to milk, and my grandparents have known this as well, but my mother would refuse to accept that, and one day she forced me to drink milk, telling me how I was just making up my allergies to try to be cool and how kids or times never had any allergies, which then resulted in me being admitted to the hospital. My mother got shaken up when police officers came to talk to her about the incident, and after that, she learned her lesson and never gave me any milk. My dad also yelled at her about it, and she started to cry. My grandparents had rushed to the hospital to be with me, and there was a lot of discussion while I was recovering. After this incident, my parents softened a bit towards me. My mother started to wake me up for school and help me get ready, and my dad would spend time with me in the evening and tuck me into bed. I don't know what flipped inside them, but they started to treat me like a human. It was weird to see my mom ask me about school or my dad invite me to watch football games with him. This is how I started to get to know my parents better. I think I was born with a lot of empathy because I didn't hold any resentment for my parents whatsoever. The three of us would go to the beach sometimes on the weekends, which is still one of my favorite memories. I was no longer jealous of the kids in my class because my parents also started to treat me with some love. When I turned 15, I realized that I had a knack for crocheting, which my grandma, Mom's mother, had started to teach me. My grandpa had passed away by this time, and my grandma would sometimes crochet and sell her beautiful handmade creations at the local craft fair every year to earn a few $100. The intricate patterns and vibrant colors she used would fascinate me, and I would eagerly absorb every detail of her craft. As I spent more time honing my crocheting skills under her guidance, a deep passion for creating unique and personalized items began to bloom within me. One day, inspired by my grandmother's entrepreneurial spirit, I decided to try my hand at selling my own crochet creation. With her encouragement, I set up a small booth at the same local craft fair where she showcased her work. The response was overwhelming, and I quickly realized that my passion could also be a source of income. Word spread about my talent, and soon I found myself taking custom orders from classmates, friends, and even people in the community. Each piece I crafted told a story, and customers were drawn to the idea of owning something handmade and unique. As my small business grew, so did my skills in creativity. I began experimenting with different yarn textures, colors, and patterns, pushing the boundaries of traditional crochet. My creations evolved from simple scarves and blankets to intricate wearables and home decor items. The positive feedback and repeat customers fueled my determination to refine my craft further. When I started to earn significant money, my grandmother suggested that I should have a savings account so I could save this money for college. When I talked with my parents about this, their eyes widened in shock, hearing about what I had been earning. Until then, they thought it was just my stupid hobby. But when they realized that I was earning quite well for someone of my age, they vehemently refused. My dad threatened to burn all my pieces and told me how he wasn't working so hard to pay for my education for me to waste my time on these stupid things, and my mother told me that I was banned from going to my grandma's place. They demanded that I give them the money I had earned, but when I told them that it was all with grandma, they called her up and started to yell at her. When my grandma found out that they were trying to steal my money from me, she basically refused to give them anything while my parents screamed at her about how they deserved every cent. This is how I realized that my parents had never changed over the years. They were very much the same, selfish and self-serving. I could not just give up my passion for crocheting, and I wasn't going to lose out on earning money from this successful side business, which could potentially help me through college. Seeing how my parents were behaving, there was a good chance they might not even send me to college, so I needed to take matters into my own hands and work for my future. I had to come up with a plan, so I could go to my grandma's place every weekend and work on my designs. I started to lie to my parents and tell them how I was spending time and sleeping over at my best friend's place, who also knew about the entire situation with my parents and supported me. I would then go to my grandma's place, and we would crochet away so we could fill in the pouring orders from our clients. While my grandma continued to play a pivotal role in building my business, I also embraced different online platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook to reach a broader audience. Social media became a powerful tool for showcasing my work and connecting with fellow artisans. The digital realm opened up endless possibilities, allowing me to share my passion with a global community. As the years passed, my small booth at the local craft fair transformed into a thriving online business. My grandmother helped me open a bank account with her as the co-owner of the account. I trusted my grandma inexplicably, and it was thanks to her that I could save up all the money I was earning for my college. My grandma believed in me when my own parents wanted to just take away my money for their own use. Once my mother went through my phone without me knowing about it, and she found out about my online business and how I was still operating it behind their back. This resulted in a huge fight with my parents screaming at me and my grandma. They demanded that I withdraw all the money I had earned and give it to them since they had raised me and taken care of me all my life. I was on the verge of tears while trying to make them understand that this was for my college and that I wasn't really doing any harm to anyone. My dad screamed that I had gone behind their back and that he could not trust me anymore. My mother asked me to delete my Instagram page and stood right next to me to check if I was really deleting it. I cleverly deactivated my account instead so that later I could activate my account once I was free from my parents. Then they implemented strict phone restrictions from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. They also started tracking my location and monitoring my entire internet history with notifications triggered if I searched for anything deemed bad, even innocuous things like shopping for underwear. I was allowed to go out with my friends only twice a week, but I had to come straight home afterward. Otherwise, they would call me and my friends multiple times. Occasionally, I was allowed to hang out with my grandma for a couple of hours after school, but they banned me from doing any crocheting with her. Otherwise, they threatened to take away my phone and internet access. There were so many days that I just wanted to run away, but I was still 17 and had no way out. I requested my parents to let me have a part-time job at the local cafe, which they allowed but told me that I had to pay them 30% of what I was earning. I agreed without any fights. I would give them 30% of my earning every week, and the rest 70% I would give to my grandma to deposit in my bank account. My parents would continue to make my life difficult by regularly barging into my room at odd times to check my room, go through my chats and emails, and monitor my location. If I didn't listen to them or follow their rules, I was either grounded or they would force me to give them more of my earnings that week. Regardless of what my parents were putting me through, I concentrated on working hard at school and getting good grades. I knew that I needed to get into a good college to escape this life, so I worked my ass off. The night before I was going to turn 18, I packed up whatever it was that I had bought for myself and left other things like my clothes and my phone in the room. I made sure to wipe my phone clean so they would not find out anything about me. I also knew my parents would not allow me to take anything that they had brought for me, so I didn't take any of their stuff. The plan was already set. My grandma came to pick me up early in the morning so I could finally move in with her. My parents were shocked to see me moving out and started fighting with my grandma, saying they were going to involve the police. I told them to go ahead since I was 18 now and could do whatever I wanted. My parents then tried to blackmail me and said how they would tell everyone about what an ungrateful daughter I was and that everyone would shun me for leaving my parents, but I did not care. They even threatened that they would not help me for college, but I just smiled since I had saved up enough and was even up for a scholarship, so I no longer needed their help. As I walked out of the house, I felt a mix of fear, relief, and determination. Little did I know my journey was about to take an unexpected turn. The first few weeks at my grandma's place were a breath of fresh air. The strict restrictions were lifted, and I could finally breathe without the constant monitoring. The first thing I did was buy myself a new phone and get a new mobile number. Next, I went to the bank with Grandma and took all my relevant documents so I could convert my minor account to an individual account. I was so happy to finally get my own card, an account where I no longer had to ask for anyone's permission. I also deactivated my Instagram account so I could get back to my crocheting business. My grandma was very supportive and even offered me a small space in her house to set up a makeshift studio so I could get back to crocheting. Just a week after I had moved out of my parents' place, I found out from relatives and old neighbors that my parents had set up a party where they were finally celebrating their independence. Apparently, they were extremely happy that this was the start of their new family, free from the burden of having me around, and were telling people how they finally could live child-free. They had invited other child-free friends and had posted multiple pictures of them laughing and drinking throughout the night with not a care in the world. Initially, the news stung. The fact that my own parents were celebrating my absence just a week after I had left them, showcasing their newfound freedom, felt like a cruel twist of fate. My dad's parents were also shocked to hear them celebrating, and they tried to reach out to me. They would travel a lot in their RV exploring around the country, so it had been years since I had talked with them. When they finally got my new number from one of my cousins, they immediately called me asking me about everything. I told them the truth about what had happened between me and my parents and how I had left home. They were shocked to hear how my parents had been abusing me. They questioned me why I didn't reach out to them for help, but I told them about how my parents would monitor my phone, so I wasn't allowed to talk to a lot of people except a handful of friends and my grandma. This is when my dad's parents told me about how my parents never wanted me in the first place. But they thought they had changed over the years once I moved in with my parents and begged me to forgive them for not being there for me through all this. They also talked with my grandma, who told them about the various fights she had with my parents in order to protect me. After this, my dad's parents took it upon themselves to tell each and every family member about what my parents had put me through. Slowly, the news spread through my relatives and family friends, and everyone started calling me and offering their support. I was surprised to see how sympathetic everyone was to my plight. Some even offered me monetary compensation, but I would refuse and tell them about my crocheting business and how they could help me by spreading the word so I could get more clients. This is how my business started to slowly pick up. During this time, I had been accepted into my dream college with a full scholarship. My life was finally about to change for the better. It wasn't very far from my grandma's place, so I could come and visit her every weekend and spend time with her or work on my crocheting. My dad's parents decided to gift me their old car, which needed a bit of repairing but was manageable, so it would be easier for me to come back to my grandma's place. During this time, one of my friends who had been working for a local newspaper reached out to me and asked me if she could write a story on me, since there were not a lot of young entrepreneurs in our area who had their own businesses like me, and told me how my story could inspire other youngsters to find their own path. After some thinking, I agreed to sit for an interview. I honestly didn't think it was a big deal since my business still needed a lot of work, but nevertheless, I hoped that if there was a kid out there like me stuck in a toxic environment, I hoped that they would read my story and feel inspired from it. When my story came out, I felt surreal to see my own story in the paper. I know it is a very small achievement to be featured in your local paper, but for the first time in a very long time, I felt proud of the fact that I worked so hard on my business despite all the difficulties. My grandma was extremely proud of me, and other relatives and friends started reaching out to me congratulating me for this success. This was a new feeling since my parents had never supported nor complimented me about my hard work while growing up. My parents must have read the story as well, so they called my grandma to scream at her about how I betrayed them by going behind their back. They told me and grandma that since I had started the business while still living with them, I needed to not only give them credit publicly since relatives had been bashing them ever since I told them about their controlling behavior, but that I needed to share with them my profits as well. They threatened to take me to court, but my grandma told them that I had done all the business under her roof, so they could try going to court over it if they wanted because they would lose. I was so pissed at how my parents were behaving that I wanted to scream and yell at them, but I knew I could not do that. So instead, I organized a small celebration and invited my close family members and friends so we could celebrate the success of my hard work and business. I was anyways going away to college, so I felt like I deserved one last hooray with people who genuinely loved me. We had a great time throughout the night. Of course, word got spread to my parents, and I don't know how, but they got their hands on my new number, so they have been texting me about how I'm just an ungrateful daughter and about how they wish they never had me. My dad had even sent a long text about how he spent all his life providing for me, and yet here I was wasting away my money by celebrating with other people instead of having a party to celebrate with my loved ones when my parents also had a celebration after I moved out. Update 1. When I posted my story on Reddit, I had no idea it would blow up in just a few days. I have seen my story on TikTok, and it scares me that my parents might find out about this. For my sake, please pray that they don't find out anything. Now, as per the comments, I understand that a lot of people want me to block my parents permanently, and I plan on doing exactly that. However, I do want to send them a final email telling them about everything that they have put me through so they know exactly what I have been going through. I am not a doormat like some of you have been calling me. I am just a kid who had extremely toxic parents, and it's difficult for me to drop them. Society always teaches us about how our parents always want the best for us, but no one ever teaches us about what to do when you end up with toxic parents and how to cut them off. I understand if some of you are blaming me for letting my parents walk all over me, but please do understand that I am young and I am learning slowly to stand up for myself. Update 2. Hi everyone. Thank you to some of the people who have reached out to me with supportive messages and let me know about similar situations they have gone through. Now, as I had updated earlier, I did write an email to my parents. My grandma also helped me pen down my thoughts more clearly. I am just going to copy and paste the email content here. Dear Mom and Dad, I've spent a considerable amount of time reflecting on our past, present, and the potential future of our relationship. It's with a heavy heart that I've come to the realization that for my own well-being and growth, I need to sever ties with you both. I have spent my entire childhood yearning for your love and attempting to meet your expectations, but for some reason, I was never enough. Over the years, I've worked tirelessly to understand the reasons behind your apparent dislike for me and strive to be accepted into your lives, but you both never accepted me. From the earliest memories when Mom forced me to drink milk despite my allergies to the times I felt like a stranger in my own home, your actions have shaped my perception of how toxic our family is. Yet, through it all, I held on, hoping for a change, for a connection that never happened. Unfortunately, when I found solace and purpose in crocheting, thanks to Grandma's guidance, I thought it might bridge the gap between us. As I built my business, your attempts to undermine and control me only solidified my decision to break free from the toxic environment. Your insistence on claiming a share of my hard-earned money, threatening legal action, and attempting to control my celebrations only further highlight how toxic you all are for me. I want you to understand that this decision is not an act of revenge or an expression of anger. It's an act of self-preservation, a step toward building a life that is free from toxicity and filled with the love and support that every child deserves. I harbor no ill will toward either of you, but I need to prioritize my mental and emotional well-being. I thank you both for pushing me to become independent and for underestimating the potential within me, and I wish you both the best in your future endeavors. I hope you both are finally happy without me. I request that you respect my decision to have no further contact. Let us part ways amicably. I won't lie, but I had tears while writing this email to my parents. I know that I should be strong and remember all the bad things they have done to me, but it's so hard to cut off your parents. As children, we are conditioned to love them, and it's difficult to come out of that thinking. After sending the email, I blocked them from everywhere. In a few days, I will be going away to college, so I'm a bit nervous about it. My grandma and my dad's parents are going to help me move into my new dormitory. I am excited about meeting new people and having new friends. To everyone asking, my crocheting business is doing well, and I won't quit it regardless of my college. I love making unique designs, and this is my passion, so I will work hard to manage it with my studies. This is the only update I have for now. Update 3. Wow! It's been 6 months since my last update. I can't believe it's been so long and how different my life is now. First and foremost, I am thriving in college. The classes are challenging, but I'm putting in the effort in maintaining good grades. I know in the long run, despite my crocheting business, I need a college degree to fall back on. I have also made some incredible friends in college. Thanks to them, I even get more orders to crochet. College life has allowed me to explore new horizons and meet different people. It's a refreshing change from the isolation I felt back home. I even have a boyfriend now called Kyle. I mean, it's just been 2 months since we started dating, and we are still getting to know each other. He is a sweet guy, so we will see how this goes. Every weekend, I make it a point to visit my grandma. We have been working from her makeshift studio to fulfill our crochet orders. The business is booming, and the positive response from our clients is overwhelming. It's amazing how pursuing my passion has not only provided financial stability, but also a sense of purpose and fulfillment in my life. As for my parents, it's been a quiet 6 months since my heartfelt email. They haven't attempted to contact me, My grandparents informed me that my parents received a lot of flack from everyone. Hence, they decided to sell everything and move out of the country, likely seeking a fresh start away. I don't know where they are, and truth be told, I don't really care. The fact that they chose to leave without any attempt at reconciliation or even a single apology speaks volumes. I genuinely hope they find happiness wherever they have gone and can pursue the things they have always wanted to do. It's time for me to focus on my own journey and continue building the life I have always dreamed of. I want to express my gratitude to all of you who have been following my story and offering words of encouragement. Your support has meant the world to me. If there's one lesson I have learned through all of this, it's the importance of surrounding yourself with people who uplift and believe in you. Thanks to my grandma and friends who believed in me. This will probably be my last update. Thank you, everyone. Now on to the next story. Story 6. 6 years after running away with her boyfriend, my younger sister came back, and my mom forgot all that I had done for her. Now she is being arrested for what she did. I, 27F, have been living with my mom for the past 6 years, ever since my younger sister, Kate, 26F, ran away with her boyfriend, Matt, 28M. It's been a challenging time, and now things have taken an unexpected turn. Let me give you the full story. Kate and Matt started dating when they were in high school. Kate was 16 and Matt was 18. From the moment they got together, they were inseparable. Kate would spend every free moment with Matt, often skipping family dinners or events to be with him. At first, my mom and I tried to be understanding. We remembered what it was like to be young and in love. But as time went on, we started to have serious concerns about Matt and his influence on Kate. Matt wasn't a good student. He barely scraped by in his classes and seemed more interested in partying than planning for his future. He started drinking heavily when he was still in high school, and by the time he graduated, he was smoking regularly too. Kate would come home smelling of smoke and alcohol, and her grades started to slip. My mom and I tried to talk to Kate about our concerns. We pointed out how Matt's behavior was affecting her school performance and her relationships with the rest of the family, but Kate wouldn't listen. She insisted that we didn't know Matt like she did, that he was misunderstood, and that she was helping him become a better person. Things came to a head when Kate was 18 and Matt was 20. It was my grandmother's 70th birthday, and we were having a big family celebration. Kate begged us to let her invite Matt, promising that he would be on his best behavior. Against our better judgment, we agreed. The party started well enough. Matt arrived on time and was polite to everyone. But as the evening wore on, it became clear that he had been drinking before he arrived. He got louder and more obnoxious, making inappropriate jokes and trying to get Kate to leave the party with him. When my uncle gently suggested that maybe Matt should call it a night, Matt exploded. He started yelling at my uncle, calling him names and accusing him of trying to control Kate. He knocked over the cake table in his anger, ruining the beautiful cake my aunt had spent hours making. Kate tried to calm him down, but he pushed her away. Finally, my cousins had to physically remove him from the house. The next day, my mom and I sat Kate down for a serious talk. We told her that we couldn't stand by and watch her throw her life away for someone who clearly had no respect for her or her family. We explained that Matt's behavior was not normal or acceptable and that we were worried about where their relationship was heading. Kate got defensive. She accused us of never giving Matt a chance, of judging him unfairly. She insisted that he was going through a rough patch and that she could help him if we would just be more supportive. That's when my mom lost her patience. She told Kate that she had to choose either her family or Matt. Looking back, I wonder if we pushed too hard, but at the time we truly believed we were doing what was best for Kate. We never expected her to actually choose Matt over us. That night, while my mom and I were asleep, Kate packed a bag and left. She left a note saying she was going to live with Matt and that we shouldn't try to contact her. We were devastated. The next few years were really tough. My mom was heartbroken. She blamed herself for Kate's departure, wondering if she had been too harsh or if she had missed signs that Kate was so unhappy. I tried my best to support her, both emotionally and financially. I had just finished college when Kate left, and I had been planning to move out and start my own life. Instead, I decided to stay home and help my mom. I got a part-time job at a local bookstore to help with the bills. It wasn't what I had envisioned for my life, but I couldn't bear the thought of leaving my mom alone. As the years passed, we tried to move on with our lives, but Kate's absence was always felt. Every holiday, every family gathering, there was an empty seat at the table. My mom would often talk about how much she missed Kate, wondering where she was and if she was okay. She'd say things like, "I wish I had never given her that ultimatum. Maybe if I had been more understanding, she'd still be here." I had my own complicated feelings about the situation. Part of me was angry at Kate for leaving, for choosing Matt over her family, but another part of me missed my little sister and worried about her. We had always been close growing up, and it felt like there was a hole in my life where she used to be. We tried to find Kate a few times over the years. We reached out to her old friends, checked social media, even hired a private investigator at one point, but Kate didn't want to be found. The few leads we got suggested that she and Matt were moving around a lot, never staying in one place for long. So life went on. I worked my way up to manager at the bookstore. I dated a bit, but nothing serious. Most of my energy went into my job and taking care of my mom. It wasn't always easy, but we had found a kind of stability. Then yesterday happened. I came home from work expecting another quiet evening with my mom. Instead, I walked into the living room to find Kate sitting on our couch, a small boy of about 3 years old asleep in her lap. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. Kate looked so different from the teenage girl who had left us. She was thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and a weariness in her face that made her look older than her 26 years. The little boy had Matt's dark hair. My mom was sitting next to them, her arm around Kate's shoulders. She looked up when I came in, her eyes filled with a mix of joy and apprehension. "Honey," she said quietly, "Kate's come home." I stood there frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. Kate gave me a small, uncertain smile. "Hi, sis," she said softly. It was my mom who finally broke the silence and explained the situation. Matt had left Kate and their son, whose name is Ethan, about 6 months ago. Kate had struggled to make ends meet on her own, working 2 jobs while trying to care for Ethan. Finally, she had swallowed her pride and come back to ask for help. My mom had already decided that Kate and Ethan would stay with us. She said it wasn't even a question. They were family, and family takes care of each other. I listened to all this in a kind of daze. Part of me was glad to see that Kate was safe, relieved that she had gotten away from Matt, but another part of me was furious. Furious that Kate thought she could just walk back into our lives after 6 years of silence. Furious that my mom had made this huge decision without even consulting me. When my mom finished explaining, I exploded. I demanded to know why I hadn't been included in this decision. I pointed out that I had been the one supporting our household for the past 6 years, that I had put my own life on hold to take care of Mom, and now I was just expected to accept 2 more people into our home without any say in the matter. Kate started crying, apologizing over and over. She said she knew she had no right to ask for our help, but she didn't know what else to do. My mom tried to calm me down, saying that Kate and Ethan needed us, that we couldn't turn our backs on them. I stormed out of the house, needing some air and time to think. I walked around the neighborhood for hours, trying to sort out my feelings. On one hand, I understand that Kate is in a desperate situation. She's a single mother with a young child, and she needs help. And Ethan isn't innocent in all this. He shouldn't have to suffer for his parents' mistakes. But on the other hand, I can't help feeling angry. Kate made her choice 6 years ago. She chose Matt over us, left us without a word, and now she expects to be welcomed back with open arms. And what about the past 6 years of my life? I've worked hard to support my mom and keep our household going. Now I'm expected to support Kate and Ethan, too. There are practical concerns as well. Our house isn't very big. Where are Kate and Ethan going to sleep? And what about the financial strain? My bookstore job pays decently, but it's not enough to support 4 people. Will Kate be able to find work? Who will take care of Ethan while she's working? When I finally came back home, Kate and Ethan were asleep in my old room. My mom was waiting up for me. She tried to talk to me about the situation, but I was too exhausted and emotionally drained to discuss it further. This morning, the reality of the situation really hit me. Kate was in the kitchen when I came down for breakfast, making pancakes like she used to when we were kids. Ethan was coloring at the table, chattering away about his favorite cartoon. My mom was smiling more than I'd seen her smile in years. For a moment, it was like the past 6 years had never happened. We were a family again, whole and happy. But then I remembered everything that had transpired, all the pain and loneliness of the past 6 years, and the warm feeling evaporated. I left for work without saying much. All day I've been distracted, unable to focus on my tasks. My coworkers noticed and asked if everything was okay, but how could I even begin to explain? Now I'm sitting here trying to figure out what to do. I know my mom wants Kate and Ethan to stay. She sees this as a second chance, an opportunity to rebuild our family, and I can see how happy it makes her to have Kate back, to be a grandmother to Ethan. But I'm struggling to let go of my anger and resentment. I feel like Kate is being rewarded for her bad choices while I'm being taken for granted. I've been the responsible one, the one who stayed and took care of things, and now I'm expected to just adapt to this new situation without complaint. At the same time, I feel guilty for these thoughts. Isn't family supposed to be about forgiveness and second chances? Am I being selfish for not wanting to help my sister and nephew when they're clearly in need? I don't know what the right thing to do is. Part of me wants to put my foot down, to say that Kate and Ethan can't stay, but I know that would break my mom's heart and potentially leave Kate and Ethan with nowhere to go. Another part of me thinks I should just accept the situation and try to make the best of it. Maybe this could be a chance to rebuild my relationship with Kate, to get to know my nephew, but I'm afraid of being hurt again, of opening my heart only to have Kate leave us once more. So, Reddit, I turn to you for judgment and advice. Am I being selfish and unforgiving, or are my feelings justified? And what should I do now? How do I navigate this complicated family situation without losing my mind or destroying my relationships? I feel lost and conflicted, torn between my lingering anger at Kate and my love for my family. Any insights or advice would be greatly appreciated. Update: I really need to post this. I never expected my day to take such a dramatic turn. I was at work trying to focus on my tasks despite the turmoil at home when I received a call from my mom. Her voice was shaking as she told me that the police had come to our house and arrested Kate. I was stunned. What could Kate have possibly done to warrant an arrest? I left work immediately and rushed to the police station. When I arrived, I found my mom already there, looking pale and shocked. An officer sat us down and explained the situation. What he told us left us reeling. It turned out that Kate and Matt's life over the past 6 years was nothing like we had imagined. They hadn't been struggling to make ends meet or trying to build a better life. Instead, they had been involved in a series of cons and scams. The officer explained that Kate and Matt had developed a routine. They would move to a new town, and Kate would seek out wealthy married men. She would seduce them and start affairs. Meanwhile, Matt would gather evidence of these affairs, photos, videos, text messages. Then they would use this evidence to blackmail the men, threatening to expose their infidelity unless they paid up. I felt sick listening to this. I couldn't believe that my sister, the girl I grew up with, could be capable of such manipulation and deceit. But as the officer continued, it only got worse. Their latest target had been a man with significant wealth and powerful connections. Kate had seduced him, and he had fallen for her act completely. He believed she was a single mother struggling to care for her son. He had given her money, helped her find a place to live, even talked about leaving his wife for her. But then he discovered the truth. He found out about Matt, realized that Kate was married, and uncovered their whole operation. Instead of giving in to their blackmail attempts, he used his connections to set a trap for them. Matt was caught first. He had been arrested a week ago in another city. Kate had managed to escape, and that's when she came to us. She hadn't told us anything about what was really going on. She had used us as a hiding place, putting us at risk without a second thought. The police had been tracking Kate and finally traced her to our house. That's why they had come to arrest her. The officer told us that Kate was facing serious charges: fraud, blackmail, and possibly even prostitution. She was likely looking at significant jail time. As for Ethan, child services had been notified. However, given that my mom and I were his closest relatives and had no involvement in Kate's crimes, we would likely be given the option to take custody of him if we wanted. I sat there trying to process all of this information. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: shock, anger, betrayal, sadness. I looked at my mom and saw tears streaming down her face. She looked broken, as if her whole world had shattered. We were allowed to see Kate briefly. She was in a holding cell, her face streaked with tears. When she saw us, she broke down sobbing, begging us to help her. She swore she never meant for things to go this far, that she and Matt had just been desperate for money at first, and then things had spiraled out of control. I didn't know what to say to her. Part of me wanted to yell at her, to demand how she could have done this, how she could have lied to us and used us. But seeing her there behind bars, looking so small and scared, I couldn't find the words. In the end, I just told her that we would look after Ethan and left. The next few days were a blur. We had to deal with lawyers, child services, and the press who had gotten wind of the story. Our quiet life had been turned upside down. Ethan was placed in our care temporarily while the legal process unfolded. He didn't understand what was happening, only that his mommy was gone and he was living with us now. It broke my heart to see him asking for Kate, not knowing if or when he would see her again. My mom was devastated. She blamed herself, wondering if she had done something wrong in raising Kate, if there were signs she had missed. I tried to comfort her, but I was struggling with my own emotions. I felt angry at Kate for putting us through this, for lying to us and using us, but I also felt guilty. I had been so focused on my own hatred when Kate came back that I hadn't noticed anything was wrong. Should I have seen through her act? Could I have prevented this somehow? As the days passed, we had to make some difficult decisions. We decided to take full custody of Ethan. Despite everything, he was our family, and we couldn't bear the thought of him ending up in the foster system. It meant significant changes to our lives. I had to adjust my work schedule, we had to rearrange the house to make room for him, and we had to figure out childcare and eventually schooling. We also had to decide how to handle Kate's legal situation. After much discussion, we decided to hire a lawyer for her but made it clear that we wouldn't be able to pay any fines or restitution on her behalf. Our resources had to go towards taking care of Ethan now. As the weeks went by, we settled into a new routine. Ethan started to adjust to living with us, though he still had nightmares and would cry for Kate sometimes. My mom threw herself into caring for him, seeming to find some healing in her role as a grandmother. I found myself in a strange new role: part sister, part aunt, part reluctant parent. It wasn't easy, but seeing Ethan smile or hearing his laughter made it worth it. And in a way, caring for him helped me process my feelings about Kate. I could see so much of her in him, reminders of the sister I used to know and love. We visited Kate in jail a few times. It was always difficult seeing her in that environment, knowing what she had done. She expressed remorse for her actions and for dragging us into her mess. She thanked us for taking care of Ethan and said she hoped that one day we could forgive her. I don't know if forgiveness is possible yet. The hurt and betrayal are still too fresh. But I'm trying to focus on the present, on giving Ethan the stable, loving home he deserves. This whole experience has taught me that life can change in an instant. Family is complicated, and sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us deeply. But it's also shown me the strength of the bonds between my mom and me, and the capacity we have to love and care for others, even in the most difficult circumstances. I don't know what the future holds. Kate's trial is still pending, and we don't know how long she'll be in jail. Raising Ethan will undoubtedly bring new challenges. But for now, we're taking it one day at a time, trying to create a new normal in the wake of this family tragedy. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My wife, 27F, and I, 28M, have been together for 6 years and married for 18 months. I feel like she is cheating on me. She is not actually willing to work on the relationship issues we've been struggling with. I need advice, encouragement, and perspective. Sorry for the long post. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide further details if needed. Just ask. So things have been pretty rocky between my wife and me for several months. We had a rough 2020, didn't most of us? But I thought it was more due to the stress of my job than COVID-19. Then she lost her job and my job started getting worse. I felt a stressful anxiety to perform even better as the only income earner at the time. Then she started a new job and we sort of drifted apart. Early this year, we had a talk about this where I expressed my sadness that we are so distant and haven't connected in a long time. We haven't been physically intimate in nearly all this time either. In early April, I commenced individual therapy, and it has really helped me process my thoughts and feelings. I've been actively trying to share those with my wife and be confident in being vulnerable, honest, and genuine. She told me, however, that she feels like she is smothered and overwhelmed and needs space, which I have tried to respect and give to her. Through all of this, though, she's indicated that she does want to work on improving things with me and getting to a place where we can both be happy. So I'd hoped that if I keep trying and putting in effort, things will move toward a better place. It hasn't. I don't know if anything I'm doing is helping or hurting. Giving space, trying to be more supportive of her, not trying to be controlling or restrictive. She still seems so far away. I find myself holding back things I'd normally be excited to tell her about because she gives off a vibe that I annoy, distract, and bother her. I brought this up to her and how I felt like she's not putting in much effort from my point of view, and that I don't think there's a way to improve our relationship without actually spending time together, talking about it, and addressing it. She indicated that she had been trying and putting in effort for the past year and felt like I was the one who wasn't doing anything, and now she's kind of burned out. I apologized and said I can't change what I did or did not do in the past, but I'm ready and willing and trying hard to fix things now, but I need her help too. She didn't have much to say to that. Because of the distance between us, I've started to notice how close she has gotten with a coworker of hers, a single guy about my age. They see each other every day, go out to lunch almost every day. Sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with others. My wife frequently stays late at work, and, though not confirmed to me, I'm pretty sure he's always there too. They go out for drinks with coworkers and have attended soccer games together, just the two of them, and then gone out to bars. I know they've gone over to his place until after midnight as well. This all makes me feel super uneasy and hurt. My wife doesn't do any of this with me. In fact, it seems like a chore to her to have to spend time with me. But she willingly and gleefully seems to adore being around this guy. I'll call him Mark for ease of reference. This has been happening since like early March, at least. I didn't bring anything up then because, 1, she even mentioned to me that she didn't want to make me sad by hanging out with Mark, but that he's a good guy and had never tried anything. 2, things were starting to get rocky between me and her, and I wasn't confident enough to assert myself. 3, I didn't want to feel like the jealous boyfriend type and tell her she can't be friends with a guy. Well, as things have deteriorated between us and I've observed her talking to him and spending what seems like most of her time with him, it's been hurting me more and more. I told her last week that they are making me uncomfortable. She asked, well, what do you want me to do about it? I felt very strongly that she should be the one to decide what she wants to do with the information I give to her about my feelings on her closeness with Mark. She never suggested anything, just said that I can put my mind at ease about that, and it kind of tapered off into her accusing me of not trusting her. I told her that I do trust her not to do anything physical with him, but that I do not trust Mark because I don't know him. She seemed taken aback by that. After I told my wife that I was uncomfortable with her and Mark being together so much in their friendship, or whatever it is, I felt very strongly that I shouldn't tell her what to do or anything. I didn't want her to feel controlled by me, but she also didn't propose anything to resolve this herself. The next few days, I did notice she was at home more often and didn't go out for her usual drinks and happy hour with coworkers, which usually resulted in her spending extra time afterward with Mark. I could tell she was sad and really down, and I ended up telling her that I want her to be happy and do what makes her happy, and I worry that she basically took that to mean that she should continue doing whatever she's doing with Mark regardless of my feelings. I've spoken with my therapist about my feelings on this and what I'm worried about and what is giving me pause and anxiety about my wife's friendship with her coworker. I told my therapist about how it makes me uncomfortable that my wife and Mark see each other all the time, that she chooses actively to spend more time with Mark than me, that she seems to constantly be texting him, that I've seen her sitting on the other couch near me texting him long threads or continually chatting when I am lucky if she sends me 3 texts during the day, that she has, on several occasions, gone out drinking with him and then went over to his place and didn't get home until around 2 a.m. When he drove her home, That just last weekend she brought our dog over while she went out with some girlfriends and had Mark dog sit while I was out of town and didn't even tell me about that until after the fact. That she seems to be happier when she comes back from hanging out with him or when she's talking to him. That reminds me of how she seemed and acted when we were first dating and getting to know each other, and that crushes me. I just have really weird gut feelings about the whole thing from my perspective, which is the only one I have since she won't talk to me about this. I feel like lines have been crossed that should not be in a marriage. In fairness to her, maybe she doesn't think any boundaries have been broken, or maybe she is towing the line, and it's only a matter of time until stuff gets physical. I told my therapist that it had hurt me when I explicitly told my wife last Sunday that her closeness with him is making me uncomfortable and uneasy. She immediately responded with, "Well, we are just friends, so you can put your mind at ease about that," and then immediately shifted the conversation to, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" He's one of the few things that have brought me happiness and support lately, which absolutely crushed me. It doesn't feel to me like they are just friends, and I can't shake the weird feeling. And it makes me feel so bad and guilty to feel like this because I want to give her the benefit of the doubt and not assume the worst, but also I feel like my feelings are valid and deserve to be respected too. Anyway, after I told her that I want her to be happy and do what makes her happy this past Saturday night, she went to a coworker's wedding with a big group. This has been planned for a while. It was a small wedding and I didn't go. Mark was there. They all got super drunk together, and then a designated driver brought her home at 1 a.m. And she was absolutely wasted. While I was helping get her into bed and making sure she'd be okay, she just kept repeating over and over, "How's Mark? Is Mark okay? Did Mark get home?" I said, "Sure, he's fine. I don't have his number. You can find out tomorrow." Then she goes, "I know his number," and started saying my number. That hurt. Then she kept asking about how he was doing and if he was okay until she fell asleep. Now, a couple of days out of that moment and still processing it, I feel even more like she's totally lost feelings and attraction for me, and that she's not just friends with this guy but is more emotionally invested in him than she's willing to let on or maybe even admit to herself. It's really hurting me, and I can't get it out of my head. My mind keeps wandering and assuming things, and I really want to have a real, honest conversation about this with her. But I'm nervous that, 1, it's going to come out as accusatory and interrogative on my part and make her super defensive and dismissive from the get-go. And 2, I get all hung up that I already shut the door on this issue and shouldn't rehash it with her because I already brought up that I'm uncomfortable with their dynamic and then a few days later told her I just want her to be happy and do what makes her happy. I'm constantly hurting. There's a pit in my stomach. I don't have an appetite. I'm not sleeping. I'm losing weight. I can't focus or concentrate. I worry all the time about if she's flirting with him or texting him sexual stuff or hugging him or if they cuddle when they're together, all things she doesn't do with me. I get angry because he's a single dude who also actively chooses to spend all his time with a married woman. What's in it for him? And then I feel guilty about feeling all this stuff. Anyway, I'd love some advice. I just want this hurt to stop. I want her to be honest with me. If she's done with us, then tell me. If she would rather be with him, then tell me. If she's emotionally cheating, I want her to own it and understand how it's hurting me. How can I broach this subject with her? Should I? How can I get some answers and definition about the dynamic between her and Mark, but not in an accusatory/interrogative way? Is she emotionally cheating on me? How should I confront this? My therapist didn't really have suggestions for me beyond, yes, you should have this conversation, and you should firmly know going into it what your boundaries for a married relationship, even one that's rocky, are, and what is and is not okay for your partner to do. I've confided in several close friends and my sister about the details I shared here, and every single one of them thought it was way up even for my wife to be doing in a marriage where everything was okay. That makes me feel a bit more validated, but I still don't know the best way to go about initiating this conversation and having it be an open and honest discussion where my thoughts and feelings can be heard, and where she doesn't immediately feel defensive and defective. Please help. I welcome any and all advice, comments, thoughts, and please be blunt. Feel free to DM as well. Update 1. My wife is still denying anything, expressing zero remorse or acknowledgement of my feelings. This goes against what many people here have said about me not engaging with her. She could tell something was up with me and kept asking what was going on and what's bothering me. I finally broke and talked to her. I mentioned my specific concerns and told her that what's been happening is not okay and that it feels like lines and boundaries are being crossed. She seemed unfazed. She seemed offended that I would even think that something inappropriate was going on. She denied that they have been physical together. She said, "I've only been out until 2 a.m. with him twice." "Yeah, well, that's too many times for me," I said. She seemed to refuse to even attempt to see it from my point of view or an outside perspective. It's telling to me that so many other people could recognize that maybe even texting a coworker so much and worrying about his well-being after the drinking was crossing a line. My wife seems to refuse to believe that she's crossing lines. She refused to acknowledge that maybe what she's doing is wrong or actually hurtful. "He's like my best friend right now." "Yeah, well, why can't I be that? I'm your husband. I know things are rocky and weird with us right now, but I'm trying to work on things, and I can't help but feel there's stuff you're not telling me." All I want is for her to accept some responsibility and remorse. She kept saying, "What do you want me to do?" She kept pointing out that they really haven't been together too much or stayed out late more than twice. It just feels like we got nowhere. When I spoke with her and told her how hurt and uncomfortable her behavior with Mark is making me, she seemed unfazed. Her first reaction, rather than being sorry or concerned that I'm being hurt, was to say, "Well, what do you want me to do about it? I shouldn't have to walk her through this. She's a very intelligent person. She should be able to see that maybe there's even just a slight chance that what she's doing would look bad to anyone looking from the outside in. She's blinded by whatever she's feeling and doing." She kept deflecting. I told her it made me uncomfortable that she was out until 2 a.m. drunk with him, that it was weird. She said, "Well, that's only happened twice." She noted that they've only been to 3 soccer game dates together. "That doesn't matter to me. The amount of times doesn't matter. What matters is that now she knows how it is hurting me, and that I told her I am not going to put up with it anymore. She should proceed accordingly." I told her that I want to be happy and I want to be with someone who makes me happy. I said I want her to be with someone she wants to be with also, and I don't want either of us to have to feel forced or like every day we have to try to conjure up feelings for the other person. She told me she loves me and wants to be with me. Felt hollow. I told her she seems completely emotionally invested in him and that there's no more room for me. I told her I feel like a roommate who sits around while she dates Mark. She kept saying, "We're just friends, and I'm not even with him all that much." She denied any physical intimacy between them. She said that other coworkers have asked her if anything is going on between her and Mark. I asked her what "is anything going on" means to her. She couldn't spell it out. I told her that I find it incredibly hard to believe that Mark, a single guy my age, has anything to gain from being just friends with a married woman. I told her that no matter how good of a guy she thinks he is, he has certainly had the thought crossed his mind of, what if? She denied that they talk about their feelings for each other. I don't believe it. I told her that if he knows about our marriage issues, then it makes it even more suspicious that he continues to hang around. It's like he's just waiting for the off chance we do break up so he can have her with no strings. I can't shake the feeling that she's lying to me. Something more has to be going on, and she is trickle-truthing me. I feel gaslit. I feel crazy that I'm feeling so bothered and anxious by all this. I wish she'd show some effing remorse. Own up to it. I told her how I sat on telling her my true feelings about this for so long because I was being too considerate of her feelings and neglecting my own, but that I needed to protect myself going forward. I told her we need to tell each other the hard stuff that might hurt the other person and be ready to do so. I mentioned that I want to be open, honest, and vulnerable with her and would expect the same from her. Even if she thinks it'll hurt me or I can't handle it, I want her to tell me. I am not going to talk to her about this again. There's no point. She seems unwilling to accept that she's in the wrong here and very plainly hurting a person she claims to love. I know I'm being naive and stupid and will get tons of comments telling me similarly, but I am struggling so hard to get my head and heart around the idea of snooping into her phone. Honestly, I've been curious, but despite the heartbreak she's causing me, it's really hard for me to pull the trigger on that. And even if I did, and even if I found something damning, I think I'd have an even more difficult time figuring out how to best confront her with that information. I feel so down on myself that I feel this way, that I feel so stuck, that I've let myself get to this position. I can't stop thinking where I screwed up along the way. What's wrong with me? What can I change? How can I change? Why is this happening? I am so tired of all of this. Update 2, we talked. She confessed that she's in love with someone else. I told her it's over. The hardest thing I've ever done. I told her I know about her and Mark. I told her that I don't want to do this anymore and that I want her to be happy and do what makes her happy. But if that includes being with Mark, then I don't want to continue to be together. I told her we should go our separate ways. I told her I don't want to be in a marriage with a woman who isn't in love with me and isn't happy with me. She cried and confessed that she and Mark do have feelings for each other. But she is adamant that it's progressed to nothing physical. I told her that regardless, I don't feel that we can continue how things are and that we should separate. I threw out the D word several times, and she got super upset and emotional, saying that I'd already made up my mind without her and wasn't even discussing it. I told her that she had made up her mind to pursue those feelings with Mark and did nothing to stop it back then. That put her on edge too. She told me I was being mean and not understanding. I told her that I can understand her losing feelings for me and falling in love with someone else, but that I don't have to accept an EA, and I wasn't going to put up with this anymore. Then she started begging, crying, saying that it seems like a rash, drastic decision to divorce and that we should try just an actual separating first. I said, I don't know what that will do for us. You'll just go off with Mark, right? She didn't really answer. She maintained that she doesn't want to jump straight to divorce. I maintained that I see no other option at this point. Even marriage counseling, in my view, wouldn't work because of work obligations. I can't just leave, but I booked a flight to go stay with my family this weekend. I cannot describe the immense relief I felt when I told her we should proceed to get divorced. The other good feeling I had was basically realizing that she's made a choice. She's picking him. By not outright saying she'll cut things off completely with him, she's made a choice. I don't want to be with someone who won't choose me. Edit for everyone concerned about the process of me moving forward with the divorce. 1. Our finances are already separated, and we have very little marital property under the law. The biggest dispute will be over our dog. 2. I am in a no-fault divorce state, and the 60-day separation requirement before the divorce can be finalized is already met, as we have been living under the same roof without sexual cohabitation for over 60 days. I don't foresee this being too procedurally or financially difficult, emotionally and mentally, for sure. Update 3. I gave her the divorce papers. I got a new job. I'm trying to move on and start healing, but it's so hard. I served the divorce papers earlier this week. It went better than expected. We didn't really fight. She didn't try to blame shift or gaslight me this time. In fact, she apologized for not being easy to deal with lately and for not handling the whole Mark thing very well. She said that she always felt like not crossing any lines or boundaries physically prevented it from being cheating. She didn't realize until I started talking more seriously about it to her that the emotional affair aspect of it all was very real and very devastating to me. It was good to hear that. It doesn't change anything for me, but at least there was some ounce of acknowledgement from her. She told me she's sorry she did things that hurt me, but that none of it was intentional. I still don't believe that she is being honest with me. She's lied to my face for months and has treated me like less than even a roommate for so long. It hurts to know that the woman I thought I could love and trust more than anything was so capable of hurting me like this. She asked if we could still be friends after all of this. Ha! She told me I am her best friend and she doesn't want to lose me. She hasn't even treated me like a best friend for months. In fact, she has straight up told me that Mark is her best friend. I don't want to deal with that. Everything in my life reminds me of her in some way. Books, music, TV shows and movies, restaurants, even certain roads I have to drive down. I feel sick to my stomach every morning when I wake up, and it turns into me feeling numb and sluggish the rest of the day. I go to the gym or go on a run every morning to try and set myself up for a better day. It helps, but I think it's because I'm so used to doing it out of habit. I'm having a hard time eating and sleeping and focusing on anything else. I fixate on all this. On her, on us, on our past, on what I could have done differently or better. I still find myself feeling like it's all my fault, like I wasn't good enough for her, and she had to seek satisfaction from someone else. It sucks to feel like that. Anyway, I got offered a great new job in my old home state, so around the first week of August, I will be starting my new job, and preparing my complete move out of this toxic environment I'm in now. I'm going to be moving to about 30 minutes from my family and will be closer to a couple of my very best friends. I think that will be good for me. I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice at my current job today. I anticipate the rest of the divorce should go smoothly. I told her I don't care about much of the stuff we have or the furniture. I just want to take the bed I've been sleeping in the guest room, the desk and bookshelf I have used for working remotely, and asked her to assist me in storing clothes. Everything else I don't care about. I just want to disassociate from everything about her and be able to move on and heal. The worst part, though, she is going to get to keep our dog. I always knew our puppy was going to be the biggest sticking point. She was going to fight me tooth and nail for him. She knows how much I care for him and how bonded he and I are, and how dedicated I am to him. I made clear to her that I want to keep him, but she adamantly refused. She said that she can't believe I'd be willing to leave her high and dry and with nobody and even try to take her dog away from her too. She is jealous that I am closer with my family than she is with hers and that I'm moving to be near my parents and siblings. Also, how am I leaving her high and dry? I'm giving her practically everything. Plus she has Mark now. I decided that I just want this to be over with and I want to start moving on from this, and if the dog is going to be the only thing slowing that down, I felt like I needed to give him up for my own sanity. But it's going to be so hard. It feels like I'm losing 2 people that I love and it's devastating, or at least one soul that I love entirely and another person that I love and thought loved me and cared about me, and that ended up not being the case. I feel like I mean nothing to her. Like everything I've done in the years we've been together has been worthless. I'm so tired, so strained, so ready for it all to end. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My dad left my ailing mom and me for his online girlfriend. Now that he is conned, he has come back asking for forgiveness, but my mom wants a divorce. I 28M, never thought I'd be in this situation. My whole world was turned upside down last year when my mom, 56F, was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. It was a shock to our entire family. My dad, 58M, and I were devastated. We always thought Mom was invincible. She was the glue that held our family together, always taking care of everyone else. Now, suddenly, she was the one who needed to be taken care of. The decision was made for me to move back home to help out. My job was able to be done remotely, so it wasn't a big issue career-wise. I thought it would be temporary, maybe a few months at most. Little did I know that over a year later, I'd still be here, and everything would have changed so significantly. First, things were okay. It was tough seeing Mom so sick from the chemo, but we all pulled together. Dad and I took turns taking her to appointments, making sure she ate, and helping her around the house. It was exhausting, but it felt like we were a team. As the months went by, though, I started to notice changes in Dad. He seemed more distant, always on his phone. When I'd ask him about it, I was told it was just work stuff. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured he was just stressed about Mom and trying to keep things going at his job. Mom's condition started to improve slightly after about 8 months. She wasn't cancer-free, but the treatments were working. She was still mostly bedridden, needing a lot of care, but there was hope. I thought things would get better from there. I was wrong. One day, about 2 months ago, I came home from a quick grocery run to find Dad packing his bags. When I asked what was going on, I was told he was leaving, just like that. He said he couldn't handle it anymore, that he'd met someone online who made him feel alive again. He was moving to another state to be with her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad, who had been married to my mom for 30 years, was walking out on us when we needed him most. I was in shock. I asked about Mom, about his responsibilities. He just shrugged and said I could handle it. He said he'd send money to help out, but he needed to live his own life. Before I could even process what was happening, he was gone. Just like that, our family was torn apart. I was left alone to care for my sick mother, who was heartbroken and confused. How was I supposed to tell her that her husband of 3 decades had abandoned her for some woman he met online? The past 2 months have been a blur. I've been trying to keep it together for Mom's sake, but it's been incredibly hard. I'm angry, hurt, and overwhelmed. I've had to take on all the responsibilities that used to be shared between Dad and me. It's affecting my work, my social life, and my mental health. Dad has tried to call a few times, but I haven't answered. He sent a few texts asking how Mom is doing, but I haven't responded. I'm too angry to talk to him. I feel like he doesn't deserve to know how we're doing when he chose to walk out on us. Some of my relatives have been telling me that I should at least talk to Dad, that cutting him off completely isn't the answer. They say he's still my father, and that I might regret it if I don't at least hear him out. But I can't bring myself to do it. Every time I think about what he did, I feel sick to my stomach. I know Mom misses him, even though she tries not to show it. She hasn't asked me to contact him, but I can see the pain in her eyes when she looks at old family photos. It breaks my heart to see her like this, battling cancer and a broken heart at the same time. This situation has made me question everything I thought I knew about family and loyalty. I never imagined my dad could do something like this. It's made me reevaluate my relationship with him and wonder if I ever really knew him at all. The stress of the situation has been taking its toll on me. I find myself snapping at people more easily, having trouble sleeping, and feeling constantly anxious. I know I need to take care of myself too, but it's hard when Mom needs so much care. I feel guilty anytime I do something for myself, like I'm being selfish. I've tried to reach out to friends for support, but it's hard for them to understand what I'm going through. Most of them are at different stages in their lives, focused on careers or starting families. They try to be supportive, but there's only so much they can do or say. I've thought about trying to find a support group for people in similar situations, but between work and caring for Mom, I barely have time to breathe, let alone attend meetings. I know I should probably see a therapist, but again, time and energy are in short supply. I worry about the future, about what will happen if Mom's condition worsens again. Will I be able to handle it on my own? Will I have to quit my job to care for her full-time? These thoughts keep me up at night, adding to the stress and exhaustion. I miss the way things used to be. I miss our family dinners, the holidays we spent together, the sense of security I used to feel. Now, everything feels uncertain and fragile. I'm afraid to hope for better days because I don't want to be disappointed again. Certainly, I'll write an update to the AITA post with the scenario you described. Here's the continuation. Update 1. It's been about a month since my original post, and I wanted to give an update on the situation. First, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. It really helped me feel less alone in all of this. Things with Mom have been pretty much the same. Her condition hasn't gotten worse, which is good, but she's still mostly bedridden and needs a lot of care. I've been doing my best to keep up with everything, but it's still overwhelming most days. Now, for the update. Something happened yesterday that I'm still trying to process, and I could use some outside perspective. My phone rang in the afternoon. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway, thinking it might be one of Mom's doctors. It wasn't. It was my dad. At first, I was too shocked to say anything. He started talking like nothing had happened, asking how I was doing, how Mom was. I just listened, feeling my anger building with every word. Then he got to the real reason for his call. He asked if he could borrow some money. Apparently, things weren't working out so well with his new girlfriend, and he was having some financial difficulties. He had the audacity to say he wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I lost it. All the anger and hurt I'd been holding in for months came pouring out. I yelled at him, asking how he could even think about asking me for money after what he did. I told him he had no right to call and ask for favors when he'd abandoned us when we needed him most. He tried to defend himself, saying he was going through a hard time too, that he still cared about us, but I wasn't having it. I told him that if he cared, he wouldn't have left in the first place. I said some pretty harsh things that I won't repeat here. In the end, I told him not to call me again unless it was an absolute emergency. I said I didn't want his money, his excuses, or anything else from him. Then I hung up. After the call, I was shaking with anger. I felt justified in the moment, but now I'm not so sure. Part of me feels guilty for lashing out like that, but another part feels like he deserved it. Mom could tell something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the call. I don't want to cause her any more pain than she's already in. Update 2. It's been another month since my last update, and once again, I find myself here seeking advice. The situation with my dad has taken yet another unexpected turn, and I'm struggling to process my feelings about it all. Yesterday evening, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, I was shocked to see my dad standing there, looking disheveled and exhausted. He had a small suitcase with him and a defeated look on his face. Before I could say anything, he started explaining. It turned out that his online girlfriend, the one he left us for, was actually a con artist. She had been scamming him this whole time, slowly draining his bank accounts and maxing out his credit cards. When he finally realized what was happening and confronted her, she disappeared with all the money she had taken from him. As he was telling me this, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction that he had gotten what he deserved. Another part felt pity, seeing him so broken. But mostly, I felt angry that he thought he could just show up and expect things to go back to normal. When he finished his story, he asked if he could come in and talk to Mom. He said he wanted to apologize and try to make things right. That's when I lost it. I told him in no uncertain terms that he wasn't welcome in our home. I reminded him that he had made his choice when he walked out on us during Mom's cancer treatment. I said that he couldn't just come back now that things hadn't worked out for him. He tried to argue, saying he had made a mistake and wanted to make amends. He said he had nowhere else to go, but I stood my ground. I told him that his mistakes weren't our problem anymore and that he needed to find somewhere else to stay. The look on his face when I said this, it was like watching him break all over again. For a moment, I almost wavered, but then I remembered all the nights I had spent comforting Mom, all the doctor's appointments I had taken her to alone, all the stress and pain we had gone through because of his selfish actions. In the end, I told him I would let Mom know he had come by, but it would be up to her if she wanted to talk to him. I suggested he find a hotel or reach out to other family members for a place to stay. Then I closed the door. After he left, I broke down. The stress of the past few months, the shock of seeing him again, the conflict of turning him away, it all hit me at once. I'm still not sure if I did the right thing. I haven't told Mom about Dad's visit yet. I don't know how. Part of me thinks she has a right to know, but another part wants to protect her from more stress and heartache. Should I have let him stay? Should I tell Mom about his visit? I feel like I'm in over my head, and I could really use some outside perspective on this. Update 3. It's been a week since my dad showed up at our doorstep, and I've been wrestling with whether or not to tell Mom about it. The guilt of keeping it from her was eating me up inside, and I knew I couldn't go on like this. So yesterday, I finally gathered the courage to tell her everything. I sat down next to her bed and told her I had something important to share. I started from the beginning, telling her about Dad's call asking for money and then about his recent visit. I explained how he'd been conned by the woman he left us for, and that he had come back looking for a place to stay. As I was talking, I watched Mom's face carefully, afraid of causing her more pain, but to my surprise, she remained calm throughout my explanation. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she did something I didn't expect. She asked to speak with Dad. I was shocked. After everything he'd put us through, I couldn't understand why she'd want to talk to him. When I asked her why, she simply said, "I need to hear it from him. I need to say my piece one last time." At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want Dad to hurt her again, but Mom was insistent, and I realized that maybe this was something she needed for closure. So I agreed to arrange it. I called Dad and told him Mom wanted to talk to him. He sounded surprised but agreed to come over the next day. I made it clear that this didn't mean he was welcome to stay, but that Mom wanted to speak with him. Now I'm anxiously waiting for tomorrow to come. I don't know what Mom plans to say to Dad or how this conversation will go. Part of me is worried about how it will affect her health, but another part hopes that maybe this will provide some resolution for her. I'm planning to be in the house during their talk, just in case Mom needs me, but I've promised to give them privacy unless Mom calls for me. I'm feeling a mix of emotions right now. Nervous about what tomorrow might bring, relieved that I finally told Mom the truth, and uncertain about what this means for our family going forward. I'm looking for advice on how to handle this situation. How do I support Mom through this? How do I deal with Dad being in our house again, even if it's just for a short time? And how do I prepare myself for whatever outcome this conversation might have? Any thoughts or advice would be greatly appreciated. This whole situation still feels surreal, and I'm just trying to navigate it the best I can. Update 4. It's been a few days since my last update, and I felt I needed to share what happened when my dad came to talk to Mom. The conversation didn't go as I expected, and I'm still processing everything that happened. Dad arrived at the house yesterday afternoon. I let him in, reminding him that this wasn't a reconciliation, just a chance for Mom to say what she needed to say. He nodded, looking nervous as I led him to Mom's room. I stayed just outside the door, close enough to hear if Mom needed me, but far enough to give them privacy. What I heard next was something I never expected from my usually calm and soft-spoken mother. As soon as Dad entered the room, Mom unleashed years of pent-up emotions. Her voice, though weak from her illness, carried a strength I hadn't heard in months. She demanded to know how he could leave her and me when we needed him most. She reminded him of their 30 years of marriage, of all the time she had stood by him through thick and thin. "How could you abandon us for another woman?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I was fighting for my life, and you chose to walk away. Do you have any idea what that did to me, to our son?" Dad tried to interject, to explain about being conned, but Mom wouldn't let him speak. She told him about the sleepless nights, the fear of dying alone, the pain of feeling betrayed by the one person she trusted most in the world. "I gave you my youth, my love, my everything," she said, "and when I needed you most, you weren't there." Then her voice became eerily calm. "I've had a lot of time to think while lying in this bed," she said, "and I've made a decision. I want a divorce." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear Dad's sharp intake of breath, but before he could say no, Mom interrupted. "There's nothing left to say. I never want to see you again. Please leave." I heard movement in the room and quickly stepped away from the door. Dad emerged, his face pale and eyes red. Without a word, he walked past me and out of the house. After he left, I went to check on Mom. She was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face. When she saw me, she tried to smile. "It's over," she whispered. "I'm free." I held her hand as she cried, feeling a mix of sadness for what our family had been and relief that Mom had found the strength to stand up for herself. The next few days and weeks are going to be challenging as we navigate this new reality. We'll need to start the divorce process, figure out the legal and financial implications, and continue to focus on Mom's health. But for the first time in months, I feel like we're moving forward instead of just treading water. Mom seems lighter somehow, like a weight has been lifted off her shoulders. I want to thank everyone who's followed our story and offered advice and support. Your words have been a source of strength during this difficult time. As for me, I'm coming to terms with the fact that our family will never be the same, but maybe, just maybe, we can build something new and stronger from the ashes of what we've lost. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.